Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 1, A Powerful Supporter. Linley and Wharton had been separated for nearly 17 years. 17 years ago, shortly after the Yulon festival of that year, Wharton had left Wushan Township by the side of housekeeper Hyrie and headed towards the distant O'Brien Empire. At that time, Linley was only 10, while Wharton was 6. The two brothers had been very innocent and knew so little about the outside world. And back then, they were supported by Hogg, who had protected them like an old hawk looking after its chicks. But now, Hogg was long dead. Of the two brothers, one was a count of the O'Brien Empire, while the other possessed the terrifying power of the saint level. Within the count's manor, Linley, Wharton, housekeeper Hyrie, Hillman, Nader, the Barker brothers, Zisler, Jen, Rebecca, and Lena were all gathered together. 2 rectangular tables had been covered with wine and food. Wharton and Linley were engaged in conversation regarding what had happened in recent years. Although Wharton had gotten general information regarding Linley from the Dawson conglomerate, when he personally chatted with Linley, he couldn't help but grow anxious as he listened. So close. His big brother had come so close to dying. During those 3 years of training in the mountain range of magical beasts, followed by the 6 years of training in the Northwest Administrative Province, although I encountered several dangerous battles, in the end, I arrived without suffering any major harm. Linley laughed. In the past, I was worried about the Radiant Church. But now, although I don't have the power to raid their headquarters yet, I have more than enough power to protect myself. The Radiant Church had been established in the Yulon continent for many years now. For it to be on par with the O'Brien Empire as one of the premier powers of the Yulon continent, it definitely had a terrifying amount of hidden power. From the fact that the War Gods College was able to send out 3 personal disciples who were all at the saint level, one could determine that the Radiant Church must surely have quite a number of saint-level experts of its own. Big bro, you've reached the saint level. Wharton was shocked and excited. Wharton knew how difficult training could be. Although he himself had an extremely high density of dragon blood in his veins, he was still only of the 8th rank, and even in dragon form was only at the peak of the 9th rank. The density of the dragon blood in Linley's veins was lower than in his own. But for Linley to be able to claim that he had more than enough power to protect himself surely meant that Linley had reached the saint level. After dragon forming, I indeed am at the saint level, Linley said with a smile. Hillman and housekeeper Hyrie, seated at the same table, exchanged glances, excitement in their eyes. Housekeeper Hyrie's voice was hoarse with excitement. I've taken care of 3 generations of Baruch clan members now. The Baruch clan has finally produced a saint-level combatant. The saint level was simply on a whole different level. If a clan had a saint level in it, as long as that saint level did not die, then the clan would never decay or weaken. Wharton. Linley looked at Wharton. When I was in the Northwest Administrative Province, I paid attention to your affairs. It seems that you and that imperial 7th princess. Wharton nodded honestly. It's true. Big brother. I truly wish to marry Nina, but right now, the situation is very complicated. Right after Kalen gave up his pursuit of her, Bloomer appeared. On the road over, Linley had already learned of this issue. After all, right now, there are many rumors regarding Wharton, Nina, and Bloomer. Bloomer. I've heard people in the streets of the imperial capital discussing Bloomer. He seems to be the personal disciple of the war god, and is the younger brother of Olivier. Linley laughed calmly. Wharton nodded, a hint of worry appearing in his brows again. Big bro, you don't understand how famous Olivier is within the O'Brien Empire. Olivier is simply too powerful, terrifyingly powerful. 9 years ago, he already possessed the power of a peak stage saint level. And now, who knows how powerful he has become. Linley patted Wharton on the shoulders. Wharton, don't inflate the deeds of others and downplay your own abilities. Wharton nodded. Housekeeper Hyrie sighed emotionally. Young Master Linley, you've never lived in the imperial capital. Perhaps you don't fully understand how influential the War Gods College is. Even the Emperor himself would be extremely courteous to the personal disciples of the War Gods College. The personal disciples of the War God have an extremely exalted status. Hillman said seriously, after all, there have been over 100 generations of emperors since the War God founded the empire. Many of the emperors in the history of the empire have never even met the War God. But the personal disciples of the War God, they are qualified to meet him. Tell me, who does the War God care more about? Linley now understood. Good point. 100+ generations had passed. Although the War God was the ancestor of Johann, after 5,000 years, who knew how many descendants the War God had? How much affection would the War God truly have for each individual descendant of his over the past 100 generations? Just judging from the fact that many emperors had never even met the War God, one could tell what the answer to that question was. By contrast, personal disciples were different. The War God would even personally instruct them. It isn't that I'm inflating the deeds of others. It's that I truly am not confident. Wharton was frustrated. I really don't know what I'll do if Nina ends up being given to Bloomer. Wharton truly could not accept this result. *CK his grandmother, if that emperor dares to do such a thing, then we brothers will go over and abduct the princess and bring her over to be your woman. Gates immediately said. The entire hall immediately grew silent. Wharton stared at Gates in shock, then looked at Linley. Big bro, who is this? Only now did Linley come to his senses. He had been so excited at his reunion with his little brother that he had focused on chatting with him, and had totally forgotten to introduce Sisler and the others. Ha. Linley rose to his feet. Wharton, let the servants leave first. The attendants outside can leave as well. Linley was about to introduce these people in his group to Wharton. There was no need to hide anything from one of his own. Understood. Although Wharton didn't know what Linley wanted to talk about, he immediately followed Linley's instructions and dismissed the servants and attendants. Linley first walked in front of Jen, Rebecca, and Lena. Sighing with emotion, he said, Wharton, in the past, our mother was forcibly abducted by the Radiant Church, precisely because her soul was pure. Rebecca and Lena had been abducted for the same reason. Hearing these words, Wharton felt an emotional resonance in his heart. When I was in the Northwest Administrative Province, I rescued them. This one is Jen. Wharton, you need to treat these 3 girls as you would a big sister or little sister. Linley instructed. Wharton nodded. As for this gentleman, Linley walked towards Sisler. Actually, whenever Wharton and the others looked at Sisler, they felt their hearts tremble. His thin, skeletal body and his dark green eyes caused fear in the hearts of whoever saw him. This is Sisler, an Archmagus Necromancer of the 9th rank. He is the oldest member of my group, and is already over 800 years old. Linley's words caused Wharton, Housekeeper Hyrie, Hillman, and Nader to all be astonished. Necromancer. This was a legendary type of magus. And an Archmagus Necromancer of the 9th rank? It was far harder for a magus to advance than a warrior, due to the high requirement for spiritual energy. By contrasts, warriors didn't require much spiritual energy. The spiritual energy of a magus of the 8th rank was generally greater than that of a saint-level warrior. Although saint-level warriors possessed extremely tough, durable spiritual energy, in terms of volume, a magus of the same rank would possess 100 times the amount of spiritual energy, if not more. 800 years old? As I recall, a person's maximum lifespan is only 500 years, unless he reaches the saint level. Housekeeper Hyrie suddenly said. The saint-level experts had an essentially unlimited lifespan, but humans who did not reach the saint level couldn't live for more than 500 years. Haha, Sisler's ancient voice rang out. You are referring to normal people. Let me tell you something. Those magi who train in the three ultimate types of magic, oracular magic, life magic, and necromantic magic, have extremely long lives. Of the three, we necromancers possess the longest lifespan. Zisler glanced with an evil look at the group. If one of you were about to die from old age, you can come find me. Given my relationship with Linley, I can help you transform your body into a zombie body and allow you to never perish. Never perish? This was the goal of countless people. But a zombie body? Just from the sound of it, one could guess that it must be one which belonged to an undead. Warden, housekeeper Hyrie, and Hillman all squeezed out a smile. They really were rather nervous in dealing with an archmagus necromancer. Zisler. Linley looked unhappily at Zisler. Zisler's eyes flashed with green light as he laughed. I'm just joking with your little brother and his friends. Transforming a body into a zombie body isn't an easy task either. Linley shook his head, then walked over to Barker and his brothers. It's finally our turn. Gates intentionally puffed out his chest. Warden's eyes lit up as well. All five of the brothers were as tall as Warden, and they were much more muscular than him. Those long-handled griataxes in particular clearly were extremely heavy weapons. Warden, have you heard of the Armand clan? Linley looked at his younger brother. The Armand clan? Can it be, the Undying Warrior clan? Warden's eyes lit up. Linley nodded with satisfaction. Right. Barker, Ank, Hazer, Boone, Gates. These five brothers are the descendants of the Armand clan, and all five of them are Undying Warriors. All five of them are Undying Warriors. Warden was shocked. Next to him, Hyrie and Hillman were stunned as well. Being a descendant of the Armand clan and being an Undying Warrior were totally different concepts. For example, although Hogg was a descendant of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan, he himself wasn't a Dragon Blood Warrior. It was very rare that one of the Supreme Warrior clans would produce a genius actually capable of transforming into a Supreme Warrior. Right. Linley nodded. Seeing the astonished look on Warden's face, the five brothers felt extremely proud. The Armand clan had fallen on extremely hard times, and even their secret Undying manual had been lost. Fortunately, Lord Caesar helped out. Linley said gratefully. Warden, amongst these five brothers, Barker, Ank, and Gates have already reached the 9th rank of power. The other two are at the peak of the 8th rank. 9th rank. Warden was frightened when he heard this. Big bro, are you saying that? Right. After transforming, all three of them have saint-level power. Linley smiled. Warden, Hillman, housekeeper Hyrie, and Nader's hearts were filled with a hot gush of excitement. They were already very excited upon learning that Linley possessed the saint level of power, but who would have expected that 3 more saint level combatants would have popped up? 4 saint level experts. What a terrifying force this was. A basis for being confident. A very strong basis for being confident. Previously, Warden had been worrying about how he would go about struggling with Bloomer. But now that his big brother had come with this group of people, Warden felt like a beggar who had suddenly acquired 1 trillion gold coins. Lord Hogg, can you see this? Can you see this? Hillman repeated emotionally. If Hogg was still present, he would definitely be very happy upon witnessing this. Warden, this is a magical beast that I tamed in the mountain range of magical beasts. His name is Haru. Haru, greet everyone. Linley said with a laugh. The black loud panther that had been lying on the ground stood up. He swept Warden and the others with his cold, dark eyes, and then spoke in the human tongue. Haru pays his respects to you all. Warden stared at Linley in astonishment. Big brother, this magical beast just. Right. Saint-level magical beast. Linley nodded. The throats of Warden, Hillman, Hyrie, and Nader all clenched. Good heavens! Magical beasts, by their very nature, were stronger than humans of the same level. Generally, only peak stage saint-level human experts would be able to defeat any saint-level magical beasts. Linley was a saint-level expert. Fine. But his magical beast was as well? HRMPH. A cold sneer could be heard. Wharton and the others all turned upon hearing it. The sound came from Bibi, who was seated next to Linley. Bibi's head was arrogantly raised. Bibi. Seeing Bibi's familiar figure, Wharton felt very close to him. After all, Bibi had been with Linley early on. When they were young, Wharton had often played around with Bibi as well. Bibi, how does it feel to be traveling alongside a saint-level magical beast? You must really worship him, right? Bibi stared at Wharton, then said loudly, Wharton, you stinking little punk. What sort of magical beast do you take me, Bibi, to be? That fellow Haru, even at the saint level, he isn't a match for me, Bibi. Wharton and the others had shocked expressions on their faces, as though they had seen a ghost. They could accept that this mysterious panther-type magical beast was a saint-level magical beast, but Bibi? They had all watched as Bibi had first followed Linley when they were young. That adorable little shadow mouse had actually reached the saint level as well. Bibi is indeed stronger than me. The black-cloud panther, Haru, once more growled in the human tongue. Bibi raised his little head high, his eyes filled with self-delight. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 2, A Breakthrough in Spiritual Energy. 6 saint-level experts was simply too shocking. Only after a long time did Wharton and the others finally calm down from their manic excitement. But even after calming down, their hearts were still filled with boundless joy. They had been worrying this entire time about what to do about Wharton and Nina. Bloomer's status as the personal disciple of the war god and the younger brother of Olivier was giving them a huge amount of pressure. But now, they felt complete confidence in their ability to contend. Wharton's face was radiant with smiles. His older brother had brought this many powerful experts. Wharton could almost visualize the scene of his marriage with Nina. Big bro, thanks. Cheers. Wharton raised his wine cup. Laughing, Linley raised his own as well. Wharton had worshipped Linley, ever since he was young. A magus coming out of Wushan Township who was accepted to the Ernst Institute was already something incredible. But now, a scant 17 years later, Linley actually was in possession of 2 saint-level magical beasts and was followed by 3 saint-level experts. Big bro, in a few more days, it'll be the Yulon festival again. You are almost 27 years old by now. When are you planning to get married? Wharton leaned over and whispered into Linley's ear while snickering. You punk. Linley laughed. Let's not discuss this issue for now. Oh. Wharton nodded obediently. Although Wharton was now an imperial count and was a huge man who stood 2.2 meters high, in front of Linley, he still acted the same as he did when they were young. Actually, Lena and the other girls are all quite good. Wharton whispered secretly. Linley gently smacked Wharton upside the head. I'll stop. Let's drink, Wharton hurriedly said. Housekeeper Hyrie and Hillman, seeing Linley and Wharton chat like this, felt boundless joy in their hearts. Exchanging glances, they began laughing together. Linley and his little brother were extremely happy in those first few days of Linley's arrival. However, Linley had instructed Wharton that although it was fine to reveal the news of himself and Haru being at the saint level, for now the news that Bibi and 3 of the Barker brothers had reached the saint level as well must be hidden. Barker, his brothers, and Bibi were an important hidden force for Linley. In addition, in the entire O'Brien Empire, there was virtually none who knew that Barker and his brothers were undying warriors. Thus, maintaining this secret was easy. Just the presence of 2 saint levels, Linley, and the saint level magical beast Haru, was already enough to cause dread in the hearts of others. Year 10,008 of the Yulon calendar. December 30th. This was the day before the Yulon festival. It was snowing on this day, and the entire O'Brien Empire was covered with snow, as the entire world seemed to turn white. Boulder Street. Count Wharton's training grounds. Although the snow was flying about, Linley still sat in the meditative position in the middle of the grass. As for Wharton, such a powerful man as himself wouldn't care about snow. Whoosh! Wharton's bare upper body was brimming with power and heat. He put down the Warblade slaughterer to one side, preparing to take a rest. But just as he turned to look at the nearby Linley, HRM, Wharton found, to his astonishment, that although the snow was flying everywhere, whenever any snow approached Linley, it would avoid him, passing by him in a circular line. It was as though there was an invisible tornado around Linley. Not a single snowflake had fallen onto Linley's clothes. What's this? Wharton was a bit shocked. Linley, who had been meditating, suddenly opened his eyes. Wharton, what are you looking at? Although Linley had been in deep meditation, when someone paid attention to him, Linley would notice. Big bro, that snow, how? Could this be the impose level mentioned in our clan's records? Wharton said in astonishment. Smiling, Linley said, Wharton, once you reach the level of impose, it is true that you can prevent the rain or the snow from landing on your body. However, this requires that you wholeheartedly concentrate on utilizing the imposing force of the surrounding area. It is impossible to do this at the impose level while one is meditating and not focusing on it. Just then, Linley hadn't been intentionally preventing the snowflakes from reaching him. However, all it took was a thought, and the snowflakes couldn't come near him. What lies beyond the impose level, then? Wharton truly admired his big brother from the bottom of his heart. Wharton had trained hard for so many years, and had received the finest instruction from the O'Brien Academy, but to date, Wharton had only reached the wielding something heavy as though it were light level as described in his clan's records. Actually, there was no need for Wharton to be too modest. The reason why Linley had been able to make such astonishing improvements, aside from his natural talent, was the fact that he was greatly assisted by his exceptional elemental essence affinity. To ordinary people, elemental essence affinity only represented that one would be able to gather mage force faster. But to experts, it represented that one would more easily be able to attune with nature, and understand the laws of the world. This part of the profound truths of the wind which I have gained insight into. Linley laughed calmly. This is just a simple application of it. Profound truths of the wind. Wharton's eyes lit up. Continue with your training, Linley said, then closed his eyes again, returning to his meditation. Actually, nowadays Linley didn't spend too much time on his stone sculpting, unless he was seized by a sudden desire. When that desire came, Linley would more easily enter the correct state of mind, and the benefits to him would be better. These days, the effects of normal stone sculpting were about the same as Linley simply meditating. The reason was at this point, given Linley's understanding of the laws of the wind and the laws of the earth, when Linley meditated, he could easily become one with nature, giving him essentially the same benefits as he had when sculpting under normal conditions. This sort of meditation on the various laws was also helping to improve Linley's spiritual energy at a constant rate of growth. Around nightfall, Linley, who had been quietly meditating this entire time, suddenly revealed a hint of a smile on his previously expressionless face. And then, Linley's lips moved slightly. Shortly afterwards, swish! Linley, who had been seated, suddenly moved at a terrifyingly fast speed. At the same instant, 9 different Linleys suddenly seemed to appear at different locations of the training ground. After the 9 blurred images disappeared, Linley once again appeared seated in the meditative position in the training grounds. Only now did Linley open his eyes. The 9th ranked wind-style wind shadow spell, famed as the most powerful speed-enhancing spell, lives up to its name. It can actually allow me, in my human form, to reach the speed of a saint level. Right? Magic of the 9th rank. Roughly a year and a half after Linley had entered the mountain range of magical beasts, he had reached the 8th rank as a magus. But from the 8th rank to the 9th rank as a magus, the amount of spiritual energy required was astonishing. Even the most brilliant of geniuses would require at least 10 years. But due to his constant meditating, Linley's spiritual energy had grown at a rapid rate. After spending just 7 years, he had finally broken through and reached the level of an archmagus of the 9th rank. Tomorrow is the Yulon festival. The day before the Yulon festival, I reached the level of an archmagus of the 9th rank. At Sheesh, Linley felt extremely happy. Magi possessed extremely powerful attacks. If you gave a magus sufficient time, a magus could definitely use his spells to defeat a warrior of the same level. The wide area spells of Magi were particularly astonishing. Tomorrow, I will be 27 years old. A 27-year-old dual-element archmagus of the 9th rank. This should be a first in history. A look of confidence was on Linley's face. How incredible! A 27-year-old dual-element archmagus of the 9th rank. This was a terrifying record which had never before appeared within the history of the Yulon continent. The previous record holder had reached the 9th rank and become an archmagus only after he had turned 30. Wind-style magic includes the Savage Tornado spell, which can easily deal with an army of 100,000 soldiers. As for Earth-style magic, the Castle of Earth can be considered a large-scale defensive spell. Linley had to admit that the more powerful a magus was, the more terrifyingly useful the battle applications of their magic became. Magi also possessed very powerful one-on-one spells as well. The 9th-ranked wind-style spell, Void Extermination. Reputedly, as long as one has enough mage force, this is a single-target spell that can even kill saint-level experts. It truly is monstrously powerful. Linley couldn't help but sigh in praise. Wind-style magic was very valiant and mighty. Void Extermination was the most powerful attacking spell out of all spells of the 9th rank in every discipline. The Dimensional Edge spell, in turn, was the most powerful attacking spell out of all forbidden level spells. The Earth style in turn was legendary for its defensiveness. Whether in self-protection or in large-scale protection. When an Earth-style magus of the 9th rank utilized the Supergravity Field spell, he could cause the hearts and veins of other experts to explode and cause them to instantly die. After all, although some people had powerful muscles, their hearts and their blood vessels weren't necessarily that tough. However, to me, the most useful spell is still the Wind Shadow spell. The most powerful speed-supporting spell. In his human form, Linley had less than half the speed he possessed in his saint-level dragon form. But by relying on the Wind Shadow technique, his speed in human form could rival his speed in dragon form. How terrifying! The day of the Yulon festival. The sun was bright and high in the sky, casting its glow on the snow-covered trees and rooftops, which gleamed dazzlingly. The entire imperial capital seemed to be much brighter than normal. On this day, the imperial capital was arranging large-scale celebrations as well. Within a carriage. Watching the festivities, Wharton and Linley were sharing a carriage while chatting about Nina, and what to do about her. Wharton, in 2 days, bring me to visit the Emperor. Linley said directly. Visit His Imperial Majesty. Wharton stared at Linley in astonishment. Linley said with a calm laugh, I have no grudges against the O'Brien Empire. If the Emperor is willing to allow Nina to marry you, I wouldn't mind settling down here in the O'Brien Empire. Wharton looked at his older brother. In his heart, he understood what Linley was saying. But if that Emperor doesn't know what's good for him and insists on marrying the 7th princess to Bloomer, then we'll have to resort to our backup plan. We'll abduct Nina and then the two of you can elope. Linley looked at Wharton. Wharton, are you ready to accept this result? Wharton was silent for a moment. Of course I am. I don't feel too great a sense of loyalty to the O'Brien Empire. But Nina, the seventh princess, would refuse. Linley asked. This was a major issue. Wharton shook his head. I know her. When I was competing against Coiling, Nina once said that if the emperor really tried to force her, she would elope with me. But Nina is afraid that we wouldn't be able to make it. You don't need to worry about that, unless the war god personally intervenes. Linley said calmly. Linley knew that given the war god's status, he wouldn't get involved in these minor issues. Only if the empire truly suffered a severe crisis would the war god show himself. Normally speaking, the war god wouldn't even get involved if an emperor was assassinated. The war god had countless descendants. If one emperor died, another would succeed him. As long as nothing threatening the entire foundation of the empire occurred, the deity-like war god would not interfere. 3 days later, a carriage came to the gates of the imperial palace. A tall young man dressed in a gentleman's suit, alongside a young man dressed in a long black robe, stepped out of the carriage. Count Wharton, who is this? The palace guards asked. Given their keen eyes, they could clearly tell that the person next to Count Wharton was no ordinary individual. With a calm laugh, Wharton said, "This is my older brother. I wish to take him to see His Imperial Majesty." The palace guards didn't make any difficulties for them, immediately allowing them in. Actually, it generally wasn't too difficult for one to be granted entry into the palace. Anyone with some status could bring people inside. This was because the palace itself was enormous. If one wanted to enter one of the important areas of the palace, however, the guards would be much more restrictive. "Stop!" 2 guards shouted. "Count Wharton, who is this person by your side? Please send a message." "This is my older brother, Linley. I am bringing my older brother to meet with His Imperial Majesty," Wharton said directly. "Please wait here first," one of the guards shouted, before turning and running inside the courtyard. There were very many experts within this courtyard. Without the express permission of the emperor, the various nobles did not dare to rashly barge in. A while later, that guard came running back. "His Imperial Majesty has permitted you to enter. There really are quite a few experts here." As Linley walked into the courtyard, he could easily sense the locations of one expert after another from the flows of the nearby wind elemental essence. After walking for a while and taking some roundabout paths, they arrived at a classical, refined study room. "Your Imperial Majesty," Wharton called out in a loud voice. "Ha ha, Wharton, I hear your big brother Linley has arrived. Come, quick." Emperor Johan's clear and bright voice rang out from within the study. Smiling, Linley stepped into the study. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 3, Provocation. Emperor Johann had heard of Linley's fame long ago. That second genius magus in all of history who had also reached the exalted rank of Grand Master Sculptor at the age of 16. An absolute genius. When Johann had learned of Linley and his history, he couldn't help but sigh repeatedly with admiration. He watched as Linley walked in. He indeed appears to be a man of great talent. Johann sighed to himself. Be it in either his physical proportions or his reserved personality, Johann could tell that Linley did indeed have that unique aura of a Grand Master Sculptor. "Greetings, Your Imperial Majesty." Linley bowed fractionally. "How dare you?" the palace attendant next to Emperor Johann said in a shrill voice. "How dare you not kneel and kowtow before His Imperial Majesty?" Linley swept the attendant with his cold gaze. The palace attendant suddenly felt as though he was being stared at by a viper, and he couldn't help but shiver. A master artisan such as Linley is someone whom we have admired for a long time. Naturally, there is no need for him to kneel and pay any obeisance. Johann glanced at his nearby attendant, and the attendant no longer dared to speak. In the O'Brien Empire, generally speaking, Ministers needed to kneel on one knee before the emperor. But people such as Bloomer, a personal disciple of the war god, only needed to bow slightly. Wharton. Johann looked at Wharton, who stood next to Linley. We have heard long ago that you had an older brother. Why is it that you have only brought him to see us today? Wharton immediately said, Your Imperial Majesty, your servant's older brother has only recently arrived in the imperial capital. Emperor Johann nodded calmly, then looked at Linley. With a laugh, he said, Master Linley, I heard that at the age of 17, you became a dual-element magus of the 7th rank. After 10 years have passed, might I ask what level you have now reached? Linley smiled. After 10 years of painstaking training, just a few days ago, I stepped past the gateway into the 9th rank. An archmagus of the 9th rank. Johann blinked. What? A surprised shout from behind the emperor. Linley casually glanced at the covering screen placed behind the emperor's seat. As soon as he had entered, Linley had known that there were 2 experts of the 9th rank hidden there, one a magus, one a warrior. Johann glanced backwards as well. Knowing that they had revealed themselves, those 2 came forward. One was dressed in a loose, long magus robe, while the other was wearing a classic warrior's outfit. These 2 are our guards. They, too, were shocked at your advancement, Master Linley. Johann laughed calmly. A dual-element archmagus of the 9th rank. Linley, might I ask how old you are this year? That silver-haired magus stared at Linley. As a magus, he naturally knew how incredibly difficult it was for one to increase one's level of spiritual energy. Throughout history, more than 10 warriors had reached the saint level in their 20s. But in all of history, there was not a single archmagus of the 9th rank who reached that rank before the age of 30. The rate of advancement for spiritual energy was something which couldn't be increased by any known means. It required one to slowly accumulate it, one step at a time. My older brother is 27 years old this year. Wharton spoke out. 27. Hearing this number, that magus of the 9th rank had a very amusing look of shock on his face. History was history. History included the records of countless geniuses over tens of thousands of years. There were a few people who reached the 9th rank after the age of 30, but that was ancient history. In the past few centuries, there hadn't been a single person who had reached the 9th rank in their 30s. But 27. 27. That silver-haired old man laughed at himself. I reached the rank of archmagus of the 9th rank when I turned 170, and I thought I didn't do too bad. But compared to you, Master Linley. The silver-haired old man sighed, shaking his head. The difference was simply too extraordinary. Mr. Gerhouse, in the past, how old was the youngest archmagus to reach the 9th rank? Johann immediately asked. The silver-haired old man said respectfully, Your Imperial Majesty, according to the historical records, the youngest archmagus of the 9th rank was an absolute genius from over 30,000 years ago. He reached the 9th rank at the age of 32. In more recent history, from the beginning of the Yuan calendar to now, the youngest genius magus to reach the 9th rank did so at the age of 35. In training battle chi, if one possessed or acquired some special treasures, perhaps their battle chi would be greatly enhanced. One's level of understanding might suddenly jump as well from a flash of insight. There had been people who had reached the saint level in their 20s. But spiritual energy wasn't something that you could easily increase at will. Even by using the straight chisel school of stone sculpting, Linley had only gained that sudden breakthrough and increase a single time, when he was 16. In the past 10 years, he had been slowly, painstakingly training non-stop. Only then had he managed to reach the 9th rank. I've heard that Master Linley isn't just a magus. You are also a powerful warrior. Emperor Johann smiled towards Linley. Linley smiled calmly. Your Imperial Majesty, you can have that person next to you give me a try. That warrior of the 9th rank pursed his lips. Can it be that Master Linley is such a genius that you have reached the level of a warrior of the 9th rank as well? Mr. Lancey, go ahead and give him a try. But you must be careful. Master Linley is of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan. Johann laughed. Mr. Lancey immediately drew his pitch-black broadsword. Linley only flipped his hand over, allowing blood violet to appear in his palm. Against a warrior of the 9th rank, he didn't even need to transform. HRMPH, a layer of illusionary, stellar light seemed to suddenly cover the broadsword in Mr. Lancey's hand. Mr. Lancey is the student of the Stellar Sword Saint. Johann explained. Stellar Sword Saint? Linley wasn't even concerned about the Stellar Sword Saint himself, much less his disciple. Swish, the broadsword seemed to split apart the air itself, chopping against Linley with seemingly enormous power. Linley just stood there, not even moving. Blood violet flashed. Mr. Lancer suddenly felt as though the entire world was filled with violet light, and that all the surrounding space had suddenly been locked and frozen. Bam! The flat of Blood Violet's blade struck against Lancey, knocking him flying back and smashing against the stone screen. The screen split apart, and Lancey spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell to the ground. Steadying himself with his hands against the floor, Lancey slowly rose to his feet. His eyes didn't have a hint of arrogance in them. Instead, he said with gratitude, "Thank you for being merciful, Master Linley." The flat of the blade had contained such tremendous force when it struck against him. If it had been the edge of the blade, he definitely would have died. Of course. It was just a sparring match. Linley said casually. Master Linley, you have already mastered the level of using the force of the heavens and the earth. My master once said that in order to reach the saint level, one must master this level. I am too far off from your level, Master Linley. Lancey knew his own limits. When sparring against his master, he had previously experienced the sensation of the space around him having been frozen and locked. Emperor Johann's eyes narrowed. The Empire's intelligence regarding the Dragon Blood Warriors was quite detailed. If a person were able to reach the 9th rank in human form, then after dragon forming, that person would definitely be at the saint level of power. And if they were able to reach the saint level in human form, then in dragon form, they would definitely be invincible amongst saint levels. The saint level. Linley's status in Johann's mind was continuing to rise. Haha, Master Linley, you truly are the most incredible genius that we have ever seen. Even Olivier cannot come close to competing with you. Johann laughed loudly. As a warrior, Olivier perhaps was on par with Linley. But as a magus? Who could compete with him, the greatest genius in all of history? As a stone sculptor? Linley had been acclaimed as a Grand Master sculptor at the age of 16. Every aficionado of stone sculptures was filled with worship towards him. It was very hard to reach the peak of any field. For someone to reach the peak of 3 fields, only the word genius could be used to describe him. Your Imperial Majesty. Linley didn't want to waste any time with Johann. I just recently arrived at the Imperial capital. There are many things I don't understand too well regarding the affairs of the Empire. But I understand that my younger brother Wharton truly likes the 7th princess, Nina. In my capacity as the clan leader of the Baruch clan, I would like to ask you, Your Imperial Majesty. Would you be willing to allow Nina to marry into my Baruch clan? With Hog's death, Linley had become the leader of the Baruch clan. But this so-called clan only had 2 members to it. Johann was put in a very difficult situation by Linley's sudden ambush. Linley was indeed a genius, and Johann's heart had been moved. There were quite a few saint-level warriors in the O'Brien Empire. The War Gods College alone had several. But saint-level Grand Magi could be counted on one hand. And perhaps only a single one of them would obey the commands of the Imperial clan. Perhaps in one-on-one combat, saint-level Grand Magi were not exceptionally powerful. But in times of war, saint-level Grand Magi were incredibly dangerous. Just think about it. If a saint-level Grand Magus were to directly cast a destructive forbidden-level spell over your capital, how much damage would be caused? The million-man army that you painstakingly built up might be destroyed in an instant by a single forbidden-level spell such as the Annihilating Tempest. A dual-element Archmagus of the 9th rank at age 27. If someone were to tell Johann that a genius such as this wouldn't be able to reach the saint level and become a Grand Magus, Johann most likely would curse out that person as being mentally retarded. Human talent. The allure of a saint-level Grand Magus was much higher than that of a saint-level warrior. Master Linley, please permit us some time to consider it. Emperor Johann's attitude was incredibly friendly. Then I and my younger brother will respectfully await your Imperial Majesty's decision. Linley said with a calm laugh. Then, Your Imperial Majesty, I bid you farewell. Master Linley, why not enjoy a dinner with us instead? Emperor Johann hurriedly said. Thank you, Your Imperial Majesty, for your kind offer. But I have other affairs to attend to. Linley said with a smile. A hint of disappointment was on Johann's face, but he didn't try to press the issue. Smiling, he said, next time, then. Linley and Wharton walked out of the inner palace. Wharton was extremely excited. Big bro, I've never seen His Imperial Majesty be so humble before. Even facing Bloomer, he had never been so modest. The O'Brien Empire has many saint-level warriors, but very few saint-level Grand Magi. Linley laughed calmly. Most likely, he values my talent in magic. A 27-year-old dual-element Archmagus of the 9th rank. Anyone who heard these words would be terrified out of their wits. Nobody could say for sure how terrifyingly powerful Linley would be in the future. Judging from the look on His Imperial Majesty's face, most likely he is beginning to seriously consider things. I've been in the Empire for quite some time, but I haven't heard of any saint-level Grand Magi yet. Wharton sighed emotionally. The O'Brien Empire truly had too few saint-level Grand Magi. HRM. Wharton suddenly saw someone from afar. Noticing that Wharton had paused, Linley couldn't help but ask questioningly. What are you looking at? Oh, it's Wharton. What, did you go to visit His Imperial Majesty? A cold voice rang out. Linley turned to look as well. At a glance, Linley could tell that this youngster in front of him was no weakling. Bloomer, what are you doing over there? Wharton said coldly. Wharton was fairly familiar with the layout of the Imperial Palace, especially the wing where the 7th Princess, Nina, resided in. The direction Bloomer was headed towards was precisely the direction where Nina's residence was. Bloomer laughed calmly. What? Aren't I allowed to visit Princess Nina? Visit Princess Nina? Wharton suddenly grew calm. Bloomer, I'll wager that you haven't been even allowed inside the main entrance. This indeed was the case. Bloomer had went to visit Nina, but Nina had shut the gate in his face, refusing to see him at all. Bloomer's heart had been filled with anger at this. All his life, aside from his older brother whom he worshipped, he had never lowered himself in front of anyone. After becoming the personal disciple of the war god, he had become all the more self-confident. No, I haven't been able to get in. Wharton laughed calmly. Bloomer, did you think that because you are the personal disciple of the war god, you would definitely be able to marry Nina? Dream on. Big bro, let's go. Linley shook his head with a calm smile, then turned and left alongside Wharton as well. Hold it! Bloomer suddenly shouted. Oh! Wharton turned his head to look at him. Might I ask, O mighty personal disciple of the war god, what else do you want? Bloomer stared coldly at him. Wharton, I hear you are of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan, and that you are quite powerful after you transform. But I don't believe it. Today, I formally challenge you to a duel. Do you dare accept? Linley couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Wharton was briefly startled, and then he laughed loudly. What do I have to fear? A month from now, at the Imperial Capital's Colosseum, I'll invite His Imperial Majesty as well as my fellow apprentices from the War Gods College to officiate. If you don't have the guts to participate, you can give up, Bloomer said coldly. And then Bloomer paid no more attention to Wharton, immediately walking away. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 4, The Blade Named Slaughterer. Linley turned his head to glance at his younger brother. Smiling, he said, Wharton, this Bloomer knows how powerful you are, and yet still challenges you. It seems he is quite confident. Wharton said confidently, Don't worry, big bro. Since when have we Dragon Blood warriors feared anyone at the same rank? That's exactly the sort of confidence you should have. Linley glanced at Bloomer's disappearing back. I noticed the sword this Bloomer fellow was carrying. It seems rather special. Right. Bloomer's sword is extremely fast. When he participated in the competition to become an honorary disciple, he became famous for his fast sword speed. But fast swords are usually not very powerful. He might be able to overcome ordinary opponents of the 9th rank, but given my defensive power, even if he lands a hit on me, he most likely wouldn't be able to break my defense. Wharton was extremely confident. If the honorary disciple tournament had consisted of a winner-take-all tournament, the victor most likely wouldn't have been him. Smiling, Linley patted Wharton on his shoulder. Enough. Honorary disciple of the War Gods College. Let's go. Time to go home. As the scions of the Dragon Blood warrior clan, Linley and Wharton both possessed a sort of pride. Bloomer quickly informed Emperor Johann of the duel, and Emperor Yuan immediately sent someone to ask Wharton if this was the case. After knowing that this was indeed the case, Johann immediately issued the order to have his subordinates prepare the Colosseum for this duel between two geniuses. All of the citizens of the imperial capital became excited after hearing of this impending duel. One was the personal disciple of the war god, the 9th-ranked warrior, Bloomer. The other was a scion of the Dragon Blood warrior clan, the genius of the O'Brien Academy, Wharton. Most importantly, both of these geniuses were wooing the imperial 7th princess. Given the common folk's natural propensity to engage in gossip, many people began to say that these two geniuses were battling for the sake of the 7th princess. All sorts of rumors regarding Wharton, Bloomer, and Nina began to fill the streets and alleyways of the imperial capital. East Chan. Count Wharton's Manor, on Boulder Street. Within the training grounds. Linley and Wharton were each standing on opposite sides of the training ground. Housekeeper Hyrie, Hillman, Barker, and the others were watching from far away. The duel on February 4th was one which Wharton had to win. Linley stared directly at Wharton. Wharton, since Bloomer is famous for his fast sword attacks, I will compete with you using fast sword attacks. Don't hesitate in the slightest. Use your full strength in battling me. Yes, big brother. His upper body bare, Wharton immediately initiated his transformation. Azure draconic scales began to cover Wharton's entire body, and his arms and legs began to be covered in scales as well, as his nails also began to lengthen and sharpen. A draconic tail sprouted out from behind him, and a single draconic horn emerged from his forehead. His eyes were still black, despite an occasional golden light flashing through them. This is the true, authentic Dragon Blood warrior form of our clan. Seeing his little brother's transformation, Linley felt quite moved. He immediately said loudly, Wharton, attack me at full strength. Quickly. Understood. Wharton's eyes lit up, and he forcefully leapt from the ground, causing the earth where he had been standing to tremble. Wharton transformed into a blur as he charged towards Linley, his hands tightly grasped around the warblade slaughterer, covered as always with countless bloodstains. Wielding something light as though it were heavy. The blood-violet god's word in Linley's hands, carrying a titanic, heavy force, flew up at a seemingly slow speed towards the slaughterer. It actually managed to block the slaughterer in an extremely strange way. Bang! The two forces collided. Linley felt as though he had been slammed into by a giant meteor, as the astonishing force from that blow was transmitted to him through the blood-violet God's word. He really is ridiculously strong. An ordinary blow from him is actually on par with me in human form wielding something light as though it were heavy. Linley couldn't help but sigh in praise. Dragon blood warriors truly did have an astonishingly powerful level of strength. Twisting like a tornado, Linley easily dodged past Wharton. Swish! 9 flashes of violet light appeared. This was just the ordinary attack speed of the blood-violet God's word. As far as Linley was concerned, even if Bloomer's sword was very fast, he probably should only be able to reach this level of speed at best. Tapping the ground with the point of his foot, Wharton quickly leapt backwards with a dodge while also using the Warblade Slaughterer in his hands to block Linley's attack. But although he was able to block 6 of the attacks, the other 3 attacks from Linley landed on Wharton's body. These attacks were simply ordinary attacks by Linley in his human form. Clang! 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 3 metallic ringing sounds could be heard, as 3 faint white lines appeared on Wharton's azure blue scales. Haha, Wharton, it looks like if I don't use a bit of power, I won't be able to hurt you at all. Linley laughed loudly, but in truth, he was very happy. Wharton looked seriously at his big brother. Big brother, don't hold back. In his human form, Linley was only an early-stage warrior of the 9th rank. But right now, Wharton was already a peak-stage dragon blood warrior of the 9th rank. In terms of strength, battle chi, or defense, he vastly outstripped Linley. Lord, if you keep on holding back, I'm afraid Wharton is going to simply beat you down. Gates shouted loudly from the side. Laughing, Linley shook his head. Wharton, be careful. Linley grew solemn, and then he suddenly began to move at rapid speed. The entire training yard seemed to have suddenly been filled with a wild gust of wind as Linley's body reached a terrifyingly fast speed. Whoosh! The blood-violet God's word chopped towards Wharton, and seemed to press down against Wharton along with the very space around him. Impose. Wharton felt an incredible pressure coming towards him, but faced with this dangerous situation, the dragon blood in his body began to boil. Letting out a deep growl, Wharton exploded forth the dragon blood battle chi in his body, allowing this wild strength to be burst forth from his warblade, Slaughterer. Swoosh! The locked space was chopped open and the warblade collided directly against Linley's blood-violet God's word. But Linley's blood-violet only trembled slightly, then immediately transformed into 6 sword shadows. At such close range, Wharton was totally unable to use his warblade to block it. Harg! Wharton clenched his left fist, which suddenly had become covered with azure light, then smashed it against the nearest sword shadow. Bam! 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 The 6 sword shadows once more transformed into a single physical shape as blood-violet once more pierced towards Wharton, carrying with a terrifying penetrative aura which made Wharton tremble. Wielding something light as though it were heavy. As fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, Linley had stabbed 4 times at a single spot on Wharton's body. These repeated stabs pierced through Wharton's battle chi and his protective scales, punching into his flesh. As soon as he pierced through the scales, however, Linley immediately retracted his sword and flew back. Wharton stood there, stupefied, then raised his head to look at Linley. Disbelievingly, he said, "Big bro, how could you be so fast?" He didn't even have the ability to react. From this, one could imagine in what a short period of time those attacks had occurred. And yet, Linley had sent out 4 full attacks. You call that fast? If I were to reach my limit, then in a situation like that, I could have sent out another 6 sword attacks. This was relying purely on speed, not relying on any mysteries or deep insights. If I were to utilize the rippling wind technique, a hint of a smile was on Linley's lips. In the blink of an eye, I can execute several hundred sword attacks, or even more. Wherever there was wind, his sword could appear. The power of the rippling wind technique lay in a single word: fast. So fast it seemed like teleportation. But for the speed to reach such a level meant the power of each strike couldn't be extremely high. But with hundreds of sword blows combined together, the total strength was still astonishingly high. Hundreds of sword attacks. Warden was shocked. But, good thing Bloomer's speed is far inferior to yours, big bro. If he was this fast, I'd rather just admit defeat. Never hope to rely on luck. Linley rebuked coldly. Warden, are you so sure you know Bloomer's absolute highest speed? No, I don't. Warden shook his head. Use your most powerful attack against me. Linley said seriously. Yes, big brother. Warden grew solemn as well. This attack was one I developed based on my understanding of wielding something heavy as though it were light. The name is single-stroke execution. Warden gripped the Warblade Slaughterer with both hands, and a metallic light flashed atop the Warblade's edges. A hint of a smile was on Linley's face. That's a rather murderous name. Linley wielded Blood Violet in one hand. Whoosh! Warden sped up to his maximum speed, appearing before Linley in the blink of an eye. The Warblade, Slaughterer, seemed to dance in his hands, as agile as a falling leaf. Swish! It chopped towards Linley. Although the impression it gave was that it seemed to be moving quite slowly, in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Linley. Facing this chop, Linley could actually feel a murderous, bloody aura emanating from it. Linley didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. Clang! 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 Linley seemed to have transformed into the sun as he seemed to radiate a million flashes of violet light. These violet flashes of light all converged against the Warblade Slaughterer. The terrifying attack power that the Warblade Slaughterer originally had possessed was slowly, yet totally being cancelled out by the force of those countless violet flashes of light. Bang! The Warblade was actually sent flying, and Warden himself was chopped countless times by those flashes of violet light and sent flying as well. Warden coughed twice, rubbing his chest as he stood up. Not bad. It is quite powerful. Linley said approvingly. It actually took 16 hits from my sword to cancel out your attack. When using the rippling wind, every sword blow was fairly weak. In truth, if Linley were to attack at full strength, each blow would probably be around 25% of the power of that one chop of Warden's. Logically speaking, Linley should have been able to cancel out the attack with just 4 hits. In principle, there shouldn't be any expert of the 9th rank who is a match for you, unless they are a supreme warrior, in which case you might have a fight on your hands. Linley said approvingly. Also, Linley looked at Warden. You need to learn how to more agilely control your battle chi, and also how to move more fluidly. You shouldn't let the opponent land several blows on you in one spot. Warden nodded. Lord. A servant ran over and bowed respectfully. Lord, there is a fellow called Reynolds who says he has come to see you, Lord Linley. Reynolds. Linley's eyes lit up. Not bothering to chat any longer with his little brother, Linley immediately rushed towards the outside of the manor. Linley hadn't seen his fourth bro, Reynolds, for 9 full years. Reaching the front courtyard, Linley's footsteps slowed. Seeing the figure outside the gate, Linley felt as though he had gone back in time. His most carefree, happy youthful years had been spent with his beloved brothers, when the 4 young men had went to the Jade Water Paradise to drink and have fun. Those distant days were so happy. And now, the current Reynolds. Reynolds was wearing a long, plain robe. But his waist was now ramrod straight. His long years spent in the army had given Reynolds the aura of a military man. And by now, Reynolds was nearly 1.9 meters tall. Fourth bro. Reynolds, who had been waiting at the gate, heard the shout. He immediately looked over, and his eyes lit up. Linley had changed as well. That dazzlingly genius had now become much more reserved and composed. Third bro. Ha ha. The two brothers rushed towards each other, clutching each other in an embrace. I didn't expect that you, fourth bro, would join the army. It's been 7 or 8 years now, right? When you were at the gate, I actually wasn't sure if it was you. I was wondering to myself, why has a military official come here? Linley teased. Reynolds clubbed Linley on the chest. Third bro, damn, I had no choice but to join the army. My old man forced me to. What was I supposed to do? Fortunately, this time when I took my leave of absence, Yale sent someone to inform me that you had arrived at the imperial capital. On my way back, I came to pay a visit to your little bro and look for you. I felt sure that upon arriving at the imperial capital, you'd definitely head to your little bro's place. And see? Here you are. Haha, let's go inside and chat. After having been separated for 9 years, these brothers had countless things to say to each other. They had been separated for 9 years. 9 years later, those two youths had both become accomplished young men. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 5, The Colosseum. Night arrived. The imperial capital of Chan was still bustling and beautiful as brocade, but the wilderness outside East Chan was very desolate. On the desolate road, there was a single ghost-like human figure rapidly heading east. In the blink of an eye, the human figure traveled over 100 meters. This person was the personal disciple of the war god, the current rising star of the imperial capital, Bloomer Acre Lund. The imperial capital of Chan was surrounded by many mountains. Outside West Chan was the War God Mountain and other mountains, while outside East Chan was a number of unremarkable mountain peaks as well. Bloomer quickly arrived at one seemingly ordinary mountain. At the top of this mountain was a peak that seemed knife-sharp. At the absolute top of this peak, a man was seated in the meditative stance. Looking at how he sat there, one might be forgiven for having the strange feeling that this man had been there for tens of millions of years. Arriving at the mountain peak, Bloomer said respectfully, "Elder brother." Clearly, the person quietly meditating at the peak of the mountain was Bloomer's elder brother. The one known as the prodigy sword saint, Olivier. Tonight, there was no moon in the sky, nor any stars. In the darkness, one could only hazily make out Oliver's figure. "Second brother. Is there something you need?" A cold voice rang out. Bloomer knew that his elder brother had been quietly meditating here on this mountain peak for 3 full years. These 3 years, his elder brother had neither eaten nor drank anything. He had used the skies as his roof and the earth as his bed. 3 years ago, when he had seen his big brother, he could sense emanating from his big brother's body a terrifying, incisive aura. That sort of aura gave the impression that with just a thought, Olivier could defeat him. But after 3 years, his elder brother seemed to have turned into a boulder on the mountain, without any fierce aura at all. No one had any idea how powerful the current Olivier had become. "Elder brother, on the 4th of the next month, which is to say 15 days from now, I will have a duel with the scion of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan at the Colosseum of the imperial capital." Bloomer said respectfully. "Dragon Blood Warrior clan." His normally tranquil voice seemed to carry a hint of interest. According to legend, saint-level Dragon Blood Warriors are experts even amongst saint levels. I very much want to exchange blows with a saint-level Dragon Blood Warrior, but saint-level Dragon Blood Warriors have disappeared long ago from the Yulon continent. How strong is the person whom you are dueling? After transforming, he should be at the peak stage of the 9th rank. Bloomer said respectfully. "Oh. Using the sword arts that I taught you, you should be invincible amongst the 9th rank combatants." Olivier said calmly. "Enough. You can leave now." Bloomer hesitated a moment, then said in a low voice, "Elder brother, on the day of my duel, can you come?" Olivier was quiet for a moment. February 4th, understood. If I have time, I will hasten there. Oliver's voice didn't change tone in the slightest. It was as calm as ever. Then I bid you farewell. Bloomer immediately left. The mountain peak returned to its prior stillness. That human shadow in the darkness didn't move at all, as though it had always been and always would be part of that mountain peak. Yulan calendar, year 10,009. February 4th. This was the day two geniuses were going to duel, and many people in the imperial capital excitedly hurried to the Colosseum. Those 80,000 Colosseum tickets had been sold out long ago, and today, it wasn't just people from the imperial capital who were hurrying to watch the duel. There were people from other cities and even other provinces. Linley's group had arrived at the Colosseum early on, and had been given a private room within it. Linley, Reynolds, and Yale were engaged in active conversation. "Boss Yale, I didn't expect that you would be able to make it here as well." Reynolds laughed. Yale's forehead was still covered in sweat. Looking at Linley and Reynolds, he laughed very happily. "After I heard that you arrived at the imperial capital, 4th Bro, and that 3rd Bro was here as well, even the most important of tasks became irrelevant, and I came. This time, I can also help cheer on 3rd Bro's little brother. Boss Yale, 4th Bro, you all came. Now, we're only missing 2nd brother," Linley said emotionally. 2nd Bro is now a Grand Secretary of the Yulan Empire. He has an extremely high status. What's more, given that distance from there to here is over 10,000 kilometers, how can he possibly make it in time? Yale sighed as well. Reynolds laughingly cursed, "Back when the four of us were at the academy, 2nd Bro was the most glib and most crafty. He participated in every school activity, and he also was very good at hosting them. I knew even back then that 2nd Bro would be suited for officialdom, and see? Just 10 years later, he's managed to swindle his way into becoming a Grand Secretary of the Yulan Empire. It is fortunate that the current Emperor of the Yulan Empire succeeded to the throne when he did. This caused 2nd Bro's position and status to immediately rise." Yale said approvingly. Footsteps could be heard outside the door. "Bro, we're heading out to the Colosseum. Let's go." Hearing this call, Yale, Linley, and Reynolds all rose and left the resting room. In the center of the Colosseum, there was a dueling platform over 300 meters long and 300 meters wide. The platform was constructed from enormous slabs of tough rock, and were covered with large-scale magical arrays. On the east and west sides of the dueling platform were the viewing platforms for the families of the duelists. Directly in front of the dueling platform was the position reserved for the officiating hosts of the duel. Wharton, Linley, and the others came out of the tunnel. Seeing the countless teeming human forms surround them in the Colosseum, they couldn't help but feel stunned. So many people. Wharton had a forced smile on his face. The 5th brother Gates said with a laugh, "Wharton, there are 80,000 people here today. You'd best not lose any face." The chants from the crowd seemed like the howling of the seas, filling the air. Linley and his group could totally sense the excitement of the onlookers. The O'Brien Empire was a highly martial empire. The duel between two ultimate geniuses would attract the attention of countless people. There were 80,000 watchers inside, and outside the Colosseum, there were many people hoping they would somehow have a chance to catch a glimpse of this duel. Above Wharton's seat, Linley, Yale, Reynolds, Barker, and his brothers, and the others all sat down. Bloomer's side had arrived early as well. Bloomer had many people with him, over 100. Plenty of them are honorary disciples of the War Gods College. It seems they have come to support Bloomer. Linley said with a calm laugh. He could tell that all of those people were very strong. What good does it do him to bring so many supporters? Yale laughed contemptuously. Right at this time, the chants began to build. Clearly, with both the participants in the duel having appeared, everyone had become extremely excited. 80,000 people. The most people I've seen in one location, even in the army, was 10,000 training together. Reynolds stared at the spectacle here in the Colosseum. As the four great empires currently were not in an era of large-scale warfare, it was rare to see the various armies massed together. Everyone, silence. A voice rang out like a bolt of thunder, covering the entire Colosseum. Those 80,000 viewers immediately quieted down, as they stared at the silver-haired old man in the middle of the Colosseum. Linley and the others began to chuckle. This silver-haired old man was an expert of the 9th rank. Given his prowess in battle Chi, it wasn't hard for him to have his voice cover the entire Colosseum. For a duel such as this, even the officiating host must be an expert. Linley sighed ruefully. The silver-haired old man boomed out, "Everyone, this duel we are about to see is the most important duel in recent history. Of the two participants, one is the personal disciple of the war god, Marquis Bloomer. The other is a scion of the Dragon Blood warrior clan, Count Wharton. Both of them are unquestioned geniuses, but who exactly is stronger?" The silver-haired old man began to laugh. "Soon enough, everyone will know. As for the judges for this day, I expect everyone will be very happy once you learn who they are. The first is the personal disciple of the war god, Lord Kenyon Kin. The silver-haired old man said clearly. A middle-aged man with graying temples, dressed in a long blue robe, came striding out of a tunnel. And then, with a single step, he seemed to turn into a blur. Lord Kenyon suddenly appeared in the judge's position, then sat down. The appearance of this Lord Kenyon sent everyone in the Colosseum into a frenzy, as countless shouts and chants could be heard. A saint-level expert. Linley was absolutely certain. Just then, Kenyon had used a flying technique to directly arrive at the leftmost judge's position. The second is our Imperial Majesty, the Emperor of the O'Brien Empire. The silver-haired old man's voice grew higher, and the lavishly dressed Johann, face beaming with smiles, walked towards the judges' seats, taking the middle position. The arrival of the Emperor naturally instigated yet another bout of wild joy. The silver-haired old man's face was covered with smiles as well. After finding out who our third judge is, I too was both shocked and overjoyed. The silver-haired old man intentionally paused a moment, and the 80,000 viewers all fell silent, listening closely. Who was this third judge? The third judge is the pride of our empire, the monolithic sword saint, Lord Hatesun. As soon as the words Lord Hatesun came out, the entire Colosseum seemed to go utterly mad, as the countless viewers began to scream and shout excitedly. Hatesun! Hatesun! Monolithic sword saint! Some of the more powerful warriors began to use their battle chi to shout. The chants sounded like a million thunderbolts ripping through the Colosseum, as everyone went stark raving mad. Crazy! They've all gone crazy! Gates was flabbergasted. Is it worth getting this crazy for a saint-level expert? Zisler glanced at him, laughing. You haven't been in the O'Brien Empire for very long. You have no idea how influential the monolithic sword saint is. Reynolds' eyes were filled with excitement as well. After reaching the saint level, Lord Hatesun has experienced countless duels and battles, but he has never lost a single time. Even against the other peak stage saint-level experts of the Empire, he achieved complete victory. He is the number one saint level. No one amongst the saint levels can defeat him. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. Linley, Wharton, and the others all stared at the distant tunnel, quietly awaiting Hatesun's appearance. Hatesun finally came out. Hatesun appeared simple and unadorned, the lines of his face as hard and sharp as something from a stone sculpture. He wore only a simple grey robe, and on his back was an earth-colored heavy sword. His steps were steady and sure. Hatesun didn't use any flying technique. He merely walked forward. With a single step though, he somehow walked from the tunnel to the officiating host's platform. With the second step, he somehow arrived next to Emperor Johann, then took his seat next to Johann. It was as though he had teleported. What was that? Linley had seen something that was utterly unbelievable. Barker and the others were all stunned as well. Was that teleportation? Wharton murmured. But Linley was absolutely certain it was not teleportation. As far as Linley knew, there was no one alive who could teleport. Teleportation was just a fairy tale. When Hatesun walked, the entire earth seemed to tremble. In the blink of an eye, it was as though that long distance suddenly became short, allowing him to travel dozens of meters with one step. It was so relaxed. It didn't rely on speed at all. With but a single step, he could somehow shorten the distance. It was simply too astonishing. Linley's own training relied on two different paths. One was on divining the laws of the earth, and the other was on attuning with the laws of the wind. This simple technique that Hatesun had utilized had something to do with the laws of the earth, but Linley could not understand it at all. How had Hatesun done this? Whew! Letting out a deep breath, Linley calmly sat down. He is reputed to be the number one amongst saint levels. In all these years, no one has ever defeated him. It makes sense for a person like him to have such capability. Linley was still very confident. Hatesun might have his own marvelous abilities, but wouldn't Hatesun in turn be unable to understand Linley's vibrational attacks? Although they both attuned to the laws of the earth, they had each embarked on different paths. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 6, The Duel. Both the Emperor Johann as well as the war god's disciple, Kenyon, immediately stood up, smiling as they greeted Hatesun. Hatesun acted in a very friendly manner, greeting Emperor Johann and Kenyon as well. The three judges sat down. Behind the judges, there were many seats as well, all taken. These people primarily consisted of the likes of the Empress, the imperial consorts, the princes, and the princesses. Nina. Wharton saw that Nina was in that crowd of people. Nina saw Wharton as well. Over the past few days, the Emperor had restricted her from leaving the palace, so Wharton and Nina hadn't seen each other in over a month. Given the depths of their affection for each other, even 3 days without seeing each other would feel like 3 years. These 30 days of not seeing each other had been very arduous indeed. Wharton and Nina exchanged glances. They could sense from each other's gazes the love and affection each bore the other. HRMPH seeing this, Bloomer couldn't help but snort coldly. An ordinary person might not have been able to see this clearly from a distance of hundreds of meters, but Bloomer's vision was simply too good. He could clearly see the look in these two people's eyes. Sometimes, having good eyesight wasn't necessarily a good thing. The silver-haired old man looked at the Emperor and at the judges. Emperor Johann nodded, and the silver-haired old man laughed. In a sonorous voice, he said, "Everyone, please be quiet. The duel between the two geniuses of the O'Brien Empire is about to start. First, introducing the challenger. The personal disciple of the war god, Bloomer. The challenger was the first to be announced, while the challenged was the second to be announced. This was the rule. Carrying a long sword on his back, and dressed in a blue warrior's outfit, Bloomer flew several dozen meters into the air, arriving onto the dueling platform. Bloomer! Bloomer! Many of the 80,000 onlookers began to chant loudly. Clearly, many supporters of Bloomer were here today. In the hearts of many people, Bloomer's older brother, Olivier, was the pride of the O'Brien Empire. Quiet. The silver-haired old man smiled. Next is Wharton, of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan. Rumble, tearing off his upper body clothes, Wharton bared his torso, revealing his explosively muscular chest, causing many viewers to roar in excitement. HRMPH seeing this, Bloomer only let out a cold, contemptuous sneer. Taking the warblade slaughterer in his hands, Warden leapt directly onto the dueling platform. Given Warden's 2.2-meter tall stature, and with that massive warblade in his hands, and his bare upper body, Warden emanated a simply heroic aura. Heroic. This sort of heroic aura caused many people to begin joyful chants. Warden! Warden! These chants began to erupt as well, and these supporters were not any fewer in number than Bloomers. What is so impressive about Bloomer, that he was able to become the personal disciple of the war god? Today, everyone shall find out. The silver-haired old man said sonorously. As for the legendary Dragon Blood warriors, acclaimed as supreme warriors, today, everyone will have a chance to witness them in action as well. I now announce. The silver-haired old man's voice went up in pitch. This duel has commenced. In the blink of an eye, Warden's body was covered with azure draconic scales. A draconic horn sprouted forth from his forehead, and that blue draconic tail came out as well. The entire dueling platform began to tremble. Beneath the light of the sun, those azure blue draconic scales radiated a dazzling glare. Oh! A collective noise of surprise could be heard from the onlookers. None of the people present had seen the dragon form transformation. This transformation of Warden's had totally stunned the watchers. But after being momentarily stunned, everyone burst into wild cheers of joy. Dragon Blood warrior. All three of the judges watched with their eyes lit up. Hatesun looked at Warden with interest. It would be wonderful if he was at the saint level. The legendary saint-level Dragon Blood warriors were experts even amongst the saint levels. And he himself, the monolithic sword Saint Hatesun, was an expert amongst the saint levels. It had been a long time since Hatesun had tasted defeat. But yet if he were to challenge a deity-level combatant, he would definitely lose. Against that sort of overwhelming force, there was nothing Hatesun could do either. He truly hoped that there would appear a saint-level combatant capable of defeating him. Perhaps, he would gain some insights and suddenly break through to the next level, reaching the deity level. So this is a Dragon Blood warrior. A 12-year-old child holding Nina's hands who sat next to her said. Nina looked at the figure on the dueling platform, then nodded. Right. This is the legendary Supreme Warrior. Given the relationship between the two of them, Warden had long ago demonstrated the dragon form transformation for her. Haha. Dragon Blood warrior. Not bad. Bloomer looked at Warden and began to laugh. But my Aker-Lund clan has never believed the four supreme warriors to be all that strong. Bloomer stared coldly at Warden as he drew his longsword with a flip of his hand. The longsword looked like it was forged from a piece of ice, seemingly see-through. Beneath the light of the sun, it radiated all the colors of the rainbow. Bloomer confidently looked at Warden, and he loudly said, "This is the precious sword which my older brother gifted to me, Ice Dream." Warden heft the warblade slaughterer. In a cold voice, he said, "The warblade, slaughterer, the ancestral heirloom of our Baruch clan, the personal weapon of the first Dragon Blood warrior." Oh! Bloomer sneered. All the onlookers fell silent. They watched with wide eyes carefully trained on this duel between geniuses. They didn't want to miss a thing. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Bloomer seemed to suddenly disappear as a violent gust of wind suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the dueling platform. This was a gust of wind created by Bloomer's speed. The wind blasted against Warden's face, but Warden simply stood there without moving. HRM. Warden suddenly noticed Bloomer out of the corner of his left eye. Just as Warden turned and prepared to attack, he suddenly sensed another gust of wind ambushing him from his right. Indeed. Bloomer's real body was to his right. Laughing coldly, Bloomer looked at Warden as he mercilessly chopped towards Warden with Ice Dream. But Warden, his back facing Bloomer, suddenly smashed with his iron whip-like draconic tail. Whap! The draconic tail smashed viciously against Ice Dream, with part of the tail landing against Bloomer's body as well. Bam! Bloomer's body was sent flying by that blow as if he were but a sandbag. In mid-air, Bloomer recovered with a beautiful somersault, landing on one knee at the edge of the platform. All the viewers held their breath, not daring to chant or shout. Ugh! Bloomer spat out a bit of blood, then stared at his chest, where the draconic tail had struck. His clothes had been ripped apart. Although his chest had been protected by battle chi, the battle chi had been ripped open. A visible wound was on his chest, and blood was slowly leaking out. Only now did Wharton turn around, staring at Bloomer with his cold black eyes. A golden light flashed through those eyes. What powerful force! Bloomer said in a low voice. Without question, no warrior at the same level possessed the same strength or power of attack as a dragon blood warrior. Just a swipe from Wharton's draconic tail would be enough to deeply wound Bloomer. Bloomer now fully understood that in fighting Wharton, he could not allow himself to be struck. Just the tip of the draconic tail had struck his chest, but he had already been wounded. If it had been a full blow, he probably wouldn't have been wounded so lightly. Boom! With monstrous force, Wharton kicked off from the ground, which trembled despite the protective magical barriers on it. Transforming into a cruel blur, in the blink of an eye Wharton crossed the 100 meters distance between the two of them as he charged at Bloomer. Arg! Carrying immense force, Slaughterer came crashing down on him. Without hesitating in the slightest, Bloomer immediately dodged. At the same moment as when he attacked with the warblade, Wharton spun around and kicked out with both legs viciously at Bloomer. Bloomer didn't dare to block at all, only continuing to retreat at high speed. Whap! But despite his high speed of retreat, that lightning-fast draconic tail snapped towards him once again, and Bloomer hurriedly raised Ice Stream to block. Bam! Despite striking against Ice Stream, the powerful force of the blow still sent Bloomer flying far away towards the spectator stands of the Colosseum. The people standing near the spectator stands quickly scattered as Bloomer viciously slammed down. Bam! The stone spectator stands split apart, sending rubble flying everywhere and covering the area with dust. All the viewers sucked in a cold breath. Dragon blood warriors were simply too powerful. Because of their terrifyingly powerful draconic scales, their legs, arms, and tail could clash head-on against weapons. This was a major advantage. Arg! With a wild howl, Bloomer came flying out from the dust cloud. He didn't charge directly at Wharton, rather he charged towards the other side of the dueling platform. With just 3 massive leaps, Bloomer arrived at the other side. Bloomer, you will definitely lose. Wharton said coldly. Bloomer's body was covered in blood stains, but he still stood ramrod straight. Bloomer didn't look at Wharton, only at the longsword in his hand. I originally wanted to defeat you using the sword technique that I personally developed. But it seems that I will have to use the sword technique which my older brother taught me. His older brother's sword technique. Hate-sun could clearly hear each word. Oliver's light shadow sword? I wonder how much of Oliver's technique he has mastered. Linley frowned as well. Oliver's sword technique. Remember, the technique which defeated you is the light shadow sword. Bloomer's cold voice rang out. Suddenly, the iced ream sword in Bloomer's hand became covered with a layer of golden light. Rumble. The strange thing was, standing on the dueling platform, Bloomer suddenly split into 2 people, along with the sword in his hands. But then, those 2 shadows split once more. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. This sight was simply too queer. What astonishing speed! Given his current level of enlightenment, Linley could tell that this Bloomer was relying on an astonishing level of speed to reach this effect. This speed is actually slightly faster than my fastest speed in human form. Linley was secretly startled. Wharton kept a careful, solemn guard. He felt as though he were surrounded by Bloomer's shadows. Bloomer was very fast, far faster than him. even faster than his big brother Linley's human form. "You will lose for sure." The ice-cold voice seemed to ring out simultaneously from all of those human shadows. Just as Wharton tightened his guard even further, those illusionary shadows suddenly blurred as Bloomer appeared in front of him. Slash! Wharton simply didn't have time to use his warblade to block, and so he could only raise his arm, relying on it to block this blow. Clang! The sound of metal ringing on metal could be heard. Iced Ream only left a white line on Wharton's scales, but at the same time, Wharton's draconic tail. Swish! The draconic tail came smashing over, but Bloomer disappeared yet again. Having failed with this attack, he had immediately retreated. "What is going on?" Wharton was shocked. "How did he suddenly appear in front of me just now?" But Linley had seen everything clearly and understood. Using the illusionary effects of this light-shadow technique, he can draw near without his opponents noticing, and then using his astonishing speed, appear in front of his opponent before the opponent has a chance to react. Linley was able to use his understanding of the wind to easily determine where his opponent was, as a way to overcome this technique. Wharton, however, didn't have much attunement to the wind. "Why are there so many shadows?" The 80,000 onlookers were stunned. They saw that on the dueling platform, 16 shadow bloomers had appeared. As a piercing golden light flashed, one of Bloomer's shadow bodies appeared in a different location. The total number of shadows remained 16 in number. Whenever one shadow disappeared, another shadow would appear in a different location. Every single time there was a change, there was a flash of golden light. Bizarre. Wharton watched carefully. As another golden light flashed, Wharton's vision was dazzled, but right at this moment, Bloomer's longsword appeared in front of him. Bloomer didn't aim this attack at any other location, only at Wharton's eyes. That flashing golden sword had already appeared in front of Wharton's eyes. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 7, Intending to Inflict Serious Wounds. Bam! A draconic scale-covered left hand suddenly swung up and tightly gripped the iced ream sword in Bloomer's hand. Despite his attack power, Bloomer was still unable to make iced ream pierce forward by even an inch. The palm of Wharton's left hand was tightly pressed against the tip of Iced Ream's blade. The look on Bloomer's face changed. "Flee!" Drawing his sword back with a powerful pull, Bloomer quickly fell backwards, pressing his back nearly against the dueling platform while hurriedly scuttling backwards. Right at this moment, Wharton's draconic tail smashed towards Bloomer. If Bloomer hadn't pressed his body down to the ground, he definitely would have been struck. Whew! Bloomer stood once more at the edge of the dueling platform, panting slightly. That had been too close, he had almost been struck by Wharton's draconic tail. Bloomer's head hurt. Wharton's defense was simply too powerful. His attacks couldn't break that defense at all. Is that technique my only option? Bloomer only had a superficial understanding of the light shadow sword technique, but according to what Olivier had taught him, he could still utilize the most powerful attack of the light shadow sword. Everyone in the Colosseum was holding their breaths. These experts simply fought at too high a speed, making it impossible for most people to see clearly what was going on. They only saw that Bloomer seemed to have transformed into 16 shadows, moving about as though he was teleporting. But Wharton was like a sturdy castle. No matter how Bloomer attacked, he was unable to hurt Wharton. "If you won't attack me, then it's my turn to attack you." Wharton's voice rang out in the Colosseum, and then Wharton charged wildly towards Bloomer. Bloomer immediately prepared to dodge. But Wharton's seemingly light, agile blow from his warblade had reached a bizarre speed, and was chopping directly at Bloomer's skull. Bloomer quickly fell backwards while kicking off against the ground. Whoosh! Bloomer retreated backwards at high speed. Although his retreat was very fast, Wharton's slaughterer was even faster. Just as it was about to reach Bloomer's vital chest area, Bloomer immediately split his legs open and rolled to the back. Bam! The slaughter just scraped Bloomer on the back, slamming against the ground. Slaughterer, single-stroke execution. Boom. The entire dueling platform began to tremble, and the magical formation on the dueling platform actually split apart as massive cracks appeared on the platform. This caused all of the 80,000 viewers to feel both shock and fear. The defense of this dueling platform was incredibly strong, but the magical array had actually been destroyed nonetheless. Bloomer somersaulted in mid-air, then landed at the edges of the dueling platform. The audience near him couldn't help but begin to cry out in shock and fear. Bloomer roared angrily, a fierce look on his face. With a fierce kick against the dueling platform, Warden flew into the air at high speed towards Bloomer's direction as the platform beneath him cracked yet again. Bloomer once again dodged. Seeing Warden charge towards them, all the onlookers up above began to scream in fear. But despite moving at high speed, Warden only lightly balanced against the wall, then changed direction, continuing to pursue after Bloomer. Bloomer retreated back to the top of the dueling platform, his face now completely red as his body emanated a red light. His face then turned a golden color, although his eyes remained red. What is Bloomer doing? Linley frowned. Warden, showing no fear, brandished the Warblade Slaughterer and charged directly at Bloomer for close quarters combat. Right now, many of the viewers began to cheer for Warden, while others cursed at Bloomer. Clearly, Bloomer's repeated dodges had roused the anger of the crowd. Relying on greater speed to run and hide, what was that? Why not just admit defeat? Bloomer stared coldly at the charging Warden, a hint of madness in his bloodshot eyes. The golden aura covering Ice Stream suddenly carried a hint of white light in it. From a distance, Linley could clearly tell that the sword's aura had grown more powerful. Rumble. Repeating his old tactic, Bloomer's body once more separated into multiple images. As flashes of golden white light appeared, so too did more and more shadow Bloomers. Bloomer, can't you do anything besides just run? Warden stood there. If you have any ability, come and play. Warden knew that in speed, he was inferior to Bloomer. As you wish, Warden. A gnashing, wrathful voice could be heard as a dazzling golden light flashed, and a longsword appeared in front of Warden. Warden was shocked. In terms of speed, this time it was even faster than last time. Harg. Warden once more wanted to use his left hand to grab at Ice Stream and rely on the toughness of the scales around his palm to block the tip, but this time. Slash. Covered with that golden white aura, Ice Stream actually pierced straight through Warden's palm and then, with astonishing speed, stabbed into Warden's scale-armored chest. And then, still covered in that bizarre golden white light, Ice Stream once more split open Warden's scales. Although it took time to describe it, the actual event happened in the blink of an eye. Ice Stream pierced through both Warden's palm and into his chest, and Warden had actually reacted very quickly as well. F***ck off. Warden's right leg kicked viciously against Bloomer. Bloomer, forewarned, had immediately begun to withdraw his sword. Piercing through the opponent was difficult. But pulling the sword out was much easier. Bloomer dodged Warden's kick, but he wasn't able to dodge the slap from Warden's draconic tail. Warden had actually launched consecutive attacks with his tail and leg. Whap! That draconic tail came swinging towards him. Unable to dodge it, Bloomer could only use his left arm to block, while at the same time, allowing the momentum of the force to carry him backwards. Bam! The battle chi protecting Bloomer's left arm immediately split open, and the tip of the draconic tail actually slammed into Bloomer's chest, knocking Bloomer spinning through the air. Warden fell to the ground paralyzed, blood pouring from the wound in his chest. Big lunk. Nina called out in shock. Warden's injury was very severe. This sword blow from Bloomer had pierced into his vitals and damaged his internal organs. Even coughing racked Warden's body with immense pain. Bloomer flipped up from his fallen position on the ground. His left arm was broken, but he was still battle-worthy. But right now, Warden could no longer move. If he were to try to do so, his severe injury would only grow more severe, to the point where he might even lose his life. Ha ha. Bloomer laughed coldly. By this point, it could be said that Bloomer was the victor, but Bloomer actually moved at high speed towards Warden, the iced ream sword in his hand stabbing mercilessly towards Warden. Just as Bloomer moved, another human figure suddenly moved as well. F***ck off. An angry roar could be heard. The 80,000 viewers only saw a sudden hurricane wind appear out of nowhere, and then countless flashes of violet light simultaneously struck against Bloomer. Bloomer immediately hurriedly roused the battle chi in his body to form a protective armor. He didn't dare to take the blow head on. Borrowing the momentum force from those blows, he hurriedly retreated, letting himself be blasted backwards. But despite that, he still suffered several dozen sword wounds. Blood flowed everywhere. Fortunately, he retreated at high speed. If he had dared to resist the blow for even a second, Linley's sword would have run him through. The only things he had suffered so far were superficial wounds. "Warden, are you okay?" Linley couldn't be bothered with Bloomer as he immediately inspected Warden's injury. "I am fine." Warden shook his head. Linley's face changed. The chest was a vital area. A serious blow there could be life-threatening. That Bloomer could already be considered to have achieved victory, but he still had wanted to kill Warden. "This gentleman with the violet sword, please depart. Others cannot interfere in the duel between these two." A cold voice rang out. The speaker was one of the judges, Mr. Kenyon. Linley turned to stare at him. Couldn't he tell that Warden had already been defeated? "I represent my younger brother in admitting defeat," Linley said coldly. "If they lost a duel, then they lost it." To Linley, this wasn't nearly as important as Warden's life. It was normal for an expert to lose a duel at times. As long as they could learn from their losses, they would be able to slowly improve. "Impossible," Kenyon said calmly. "Per the rules of the competition, unless one of the duelists personally admits defeat, the duel must continue to its conclusion. Since Warden has not yet admitted defeat, the duel has not finished." Bloomer rose to his feet as well. Although he looked as though he had been badly injured, Linley's sword hadn't injured him at his vital points. He still could do battle. "You are Warden's older brother? Nonetheless, I still ask that you depart. Warden and I will continue our competition," Bloomer said directly. Warden's chest was deeply injured, and he could only speak in a tiny voice. If he used too much force to speak, his wound would worsen as well. Warden opened his mouth, forcing himself to say loudly, I. Watching beads of sweat form on his little brother's forehead as he struggled, Linley's heart clenched in pain. "Warden, don't speak. Don't speak." Linley stopped his little brother from speaking. "Sir, please leave the dueling platform." The judge, Kenyon, spoke again in a loud voice. "You shut your mother***ing mouth." Filled with rage, Linley roared at him loudly. The entire Colosseum grew silent. Even the judge, Kenyon, was stunned. He had just been cursed at. He, a stately personal disciple of the war god, a saint-level expert, had just been cursed? In the Colosseum, in front of 80,000 viewers, he had been cursed. Kenyon immediately erupted with fury. Whoosh! Kenyon immediately flew out of the judge's stand towards the dueling platform, staring at Linley coldly. "What type of thing are you, that you dare speak to your betters in such a way?" Kenyon was both a saint-level expert and a personal disciple of the war god. Who would dare be disrespectful to him? Even the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was very polite towards him. But today, in front of all these people, he had actually been cursed out by this person who came from God's nowhere. "Barker, Take Wharton away first. Linley glanced coldly at Kenyon. Barker and his brothers immediately rushed towards the dueling platform. Boom. 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 Barker and his brothers landed on the platform with those long-handled Griataxes on their backs, and the weight of those 5,000-plus-pound Griataxes caused the earth to shudder. All the onlookers had gone completely silent. Barker and his brothers very carefully lifted Wharton up, taking him down from the platform. As they did, however, Barker and the others glared viciously at Kenyon. FCK, who the FCK does he think he is? Gates even cursed at him in a low growl. Kenyon couldn't help but stare angrily at Gates, but just at this moment, Linley's body began to undergo an astonishing transformation. Black draconic scales sprouted forth from his body, and his forehead, back, elbows, and knees all became covered with sharp spikes. A black draconic tail began to wave about behind him. Ah! The onlooking audience members cried out in shock. He is a dragon blood warrior as well. Seeing this, Hatesun was shocked as well. Linley's dragon form was much more ferocious looking than Wharton's, in particular that line of spikes running up his spine. Raising his head, Linley stared at Kenyon with those utterly remorseless dark golden eyes. Today, Linley's heart was filled with boundless fury. An expert such as Kenyon should have easily been able to tell the sort of condition his little brother was in. His little brother had already lost, and so Emperor Johann and Hatesun hadn't spoken out or tried to stop Linley. But Kenyon had tried to stop him. Clearly, he was biased in favor of his fellow apprentice, Bloomer. Kenyon began to grow wary. He discovered the person in front of him was a threat. Dragon blood warrior. Kenyon said in a solemn voice, floating in mid-air. Linley actually rose into the air as well, rising to the same height as Kenyon as he stared coldly at him. Seeing Linley float in the air, everyone in the Colosseum exploded with excitement. Good heavens! Yet another saint-level combatant. Was this going to be a battle between two saint-level combatants? This was simply too exciting. Two saint-level experts stood in mid-air, staring at each other. I already told you that my younger brother admitted defeat. But you, still wanted my younger brother to continue. Linley's voice was utterly cold, seeming to come from the underworld. My fellow apprentice only wanted your younger brother to personally admit defeat. He didn't actually want your younger brother to continue. Your younger brother could have admitted defeat, but he refused to. Whose fault is that? Bloomer equivocated. Roll the F***ck away. Linley let out an angry shout as he suddenly moved. How could Kenyon watch Linley act without stopping him? He immediately drew a gold-black dual-color staff and he smashed it towards Linley. F***ck off. Linley's entire body seemed to have transformed into the sun, as countless violet sword shadows blasted out in every direction. In the blink of an eye, 10 million sword shadows stabbed towards Kenyon. Profound truths of the wind, rippling wind. Kenyon was completely unable to block. In the blink of an eye, the layer of protective battle chi over his body exploded with a bam. Facing certain death, Kenyon retreated backwards at high speed in terror, but despite that, he was still stabbed several times by Blood Violet. Kenyon landed at the edge of the dueling platform, his long robes totally soaked with blood. He looked absolutely pathetic. Kenyon stared at Linley in shock and terror. They were on totally different levels. Linley definitely had the power of a peak stage saint-level expert. A majestic personal disciple of the war god, a saint-level expert, had been reduced to such dire straits by a single attack. Bloomer. When Linley turned to look at Bloomer, he saw that Bloomer, sensing that things were going terribly wrong, had immediately fled from the platform, heading towards the position of the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. The only person standing above the platform was Linley, who looked like a vicious demon who had descended from another plane of existence. That devilish blood-violet flexible sword was still dripping with blood. The Colosseum. 80,000 viewers. Utter, deathly silence. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 8, The Prodigy Sword Saint. With a single stroke, Linley had defeated a saint-level expert who was the personal disciple of the war god. In addition, Linley's current transformation was into a terrifying form. This deeply shocked everyone present. None of the 80,000 viewers actually dared make a single sound. Deathly silence. Terrifying silence. Bloomer stared terrified at Linley, still hovering in mid-air. At this moment, Linley's cold, remorseless dark golden eyes were fixed upon him. Bloomer felt as though he could die at any moment. This utmost sensation of terror caused him to run even closer towards the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. Silence. No one dared to speak. Drip. A single drop of bright red blood dripped down from the tip of Blood Violet, landing on the dueling platform and splattering on it. In the silence, that clear sound rang out loudly. This was the blood of Kenyon. Kenyon was standing at the edge of the dueling platform, in miserable shape. Controlling his muscles and battle chi, he sealed his wound and stopped the flow of blood. But he didn't dare fight against Linley again. He was a saint level, true. But he was only a mid-stage saint level. In terms of their comparative levels of enlightenment, he was far lower than Linley. Master Linley. Johann finally spoke. His voice echoed in the Colosseum, seeming to come out of nowhere, causing more than half the people to turn to him. His face still covered in smiles, Emperor Johann said, "Although I knew you were a powerful warrior, I had no idea that your talent in this field was not one whit inferior to your talent in stone sculpting." Emperor Johann's words visibly eased the tension. Just then, Linley's vicious demeanor had caused those 80,000 onlookers to not even dare breathe loudly. But as soon as Emperor Johann finished speaking, the entire Colosseum became filled with the sound of countless conversations. Master Linley. Ah! Could it be that he is that youngest ever Grand Master sculptor? Master Linley belongs to the Holy Union. I heard that Count Wharton had originally come from the Holy Union as well. Dragon blood warriors truly are formidable. Master Linley is so young. When he was 16, he created Awakening from the Dream, and only 11 years have passed since then. A 27-year-old saint-level combatant. Doesn't that make him even more incredible than Lord Olivier? Countless conversations regarding Linley could be heard. Linley had appeared out of nowhere. His status as a master sculptor was well known to many aficionados of stone sculptures. This was an individual who was almost on the same level as Master Prolx. And now, this young master sculptor, only 27 years old, had defeated in a single blow a saint-level expert who was a personal disciple of the war god. Unavoidably, many people began to compare him and Olivier. Compared to Olivier, Linley was even younger. My young friend Linley, that technique you used just now should have been derived from your insight into the laws of the wind, yes. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, spoke, his voice ringing from the judge's platform. As soon as Hatesun spoke, everyone else in the Colosseum fell silent. What did the monolithic sword saint wish to discuss with this genius, Linley? It was indeed, Mr. Hatesun. A calm reply from Linley. Might I ask what the name of this technique is? The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was a man devoted to his training and focused on reaching the deity level. Hatesun was very much interested in the mysteries gleaned by other saint-level experts. Perhaps by doing so, he might suddenly gain some new insights and have a breakthrough. The name of this technique is Rippling Wind. Linley didn't try to hide it. In order to learn a powerful technique, one must possess a certain level of understanding and insight with regards to the laws of a certain element. Without that level of understanding, no matter how clearly you explained a technique to someone, they wouldn't be able to learn it. Still standing in mid-air, Linley glanced at the distant Kenyon. Calmly, he said, "Your name is Kenyon, correct?" At first, Kenyon had thought Linley was someone who wasn't even at the saint level. Naturally, he was furious when Linley rebuked and cursed at him. But now, he knew that Linley was more powerful than he was. Although he was still rather angry, in his heart, Kenyon already viewed Linley as someone on the same level as himself, or perhaps at an even higher level. I am. Kenyon nodded slightly. Mr. Kenyon, given your level of power, you should have been able to clearly discern the seriousness of my younger brother's injury. Given that you knew exactly how wounded he was, you shouldn't have said the words you said. Remember. As a judge, you have to be at least somewhat impartial. We had admitted defeat, after all. You can't go too far. As soon as Linley finished speaking these words coldly, he flew down towards his own squad. Linley was still concerned about his younger brother's injury. Having been rebuked by Linley yet again, Kenyon felt rather embarrassed. But he knew that he had acted wrongly here. Just then, the other side had admitted defeat. He did indeed go a bit too far by acting in such a manner. "Warden, are you okay?" Linley said worriedly as he returned to his human form, rushing to his little brother's side and crouching on one knee. Right now, quite a few people were surrounding him. Even Nina had ignored everything and rushed over. "Lord Linley." A light-style magus next to them smiled. "Don't worry. I just utilized recovery magic on him. Lord Warden's wounds are already half healed. Given Lord Warden's natural healing abilities, in 10 days or half a month, he should be totally fine. Big bro, I feel much better." Warden was able to speak fairly easily now. Linley finally calmed down. At the same time, he felt rather satisfied with the preparations the Colosseum had made. Linley knew exactly how effective light-style magi were in treating wounds. Generally speaking, low-ranking magi would only be able to treat superficial wounds. Only powerful light-style magi would be able to heal broken bones or internal injuries. And of course, the most powerful light-style magi could even totally restore to peak condition anyone who had not yet died. For example, when Linley had received the divine boon at the Radiant Temple, that divine power had carried just a bit of healing power with it, but that little bit had been enough to totally restore Linley's body to peak condition, healing all of his broken bones. This sort of regenerative ability was very formidable. Everyone. At this moment, the tournament organizer, that silver-haired old man, reappeared on the dueling platform. His face covered in smiles, he said, "I imagine everyone has had an incredible time watching this battle today. Haha. Even our dueling platform has been destroyed as a result of this battle." The 80,000 viewers stared at the shattered, crater-marked dueling platform, and they all began to laugh as well. This duel today had absolutely been worth watching. Not only had they seen a competition between two ultimate geniuses, they even had had a chance to see the terrifying power of Warden's older brother, Linley. He had, in one blow, defeated Kenyon. Although the exchange between Linley and Kenyon was very brief, the value of watching that exchange was much higher than that of the battle between Warden and Bloomer. After all, this was a battle between saint levels. Many people would live their entire lives without having a chance to witness such a battle. And the results of today's duel, I'm sure everyone will agree, are without question. I announce, the silver-haired old man's words came to a halt. As he stared at the air above him. Not just him. The tens of thousands of people sitting on the side of the judge's stand were all staring at a glowing line streaking at high speed through the air towards them. In the blink of an eye, the streak of light arrived at the Colosseum. Saint level. The Colosseum once again was filled with excited shouts. Yet another saint-level expert had appeared. This man wore simple, sackcloth clothes, and seemed very calm. But his eyes seemed to blaze with the light of the stars. His hair was black mixed with streaks of white, but judging from his face, one could tell without a doubt that this was not an old man, rather, this man was very young. Who is this person? Don't recognize him. His hair is turning white. Which saint-level expert is this? The stands were filled with the sound of discussions being held. It seemed most people were surprisingly unable to recognize who the saint level was, that had just flown here. After all, many people had seen some of the more famous saint-level experts. The young man flew towards Bloomer. Second brother, what happened? The young man said. Big brother. Bloomer's astonished, overjoyed voice rang out. This exchange seemed to have lit a fire within the audience at the Colosseum. This youngster with white and black hair, dressed in a simple sackcloth attire, was the prodigy sword saint, Olivier. Olivier. Wait, that can't be. Oliver's hair should be brownish black, and he likes wearing white clothes. Olivier. He was such a marvel to behold. How did he become like this? I can tell for certain that this is Olivier. Compared to how he looked when he last battled against Lord Dillon, his appearance is almost identical. Only, his hair looks different, and it seems his aura is different as well. Right. His aura was different. No wonder those 80,000 viewers were unable to recognize him. In the past, Oliver's aura was astonishingly sharp, like a sword that had been unleashed from its scabbard. In addition, he wore a pure white robe. His handsome face and his fierce aura had made Olivier famous throughout the imperial capital. But the current Olivier had changed dramatically compared to before. The current Olivier didn't have a fierce aura, and his hair, now part white, seemed aged. Olivier had never used to dress in sackcloth before either. He is Olivier. Linley looked at Olivier as well. Yale nodded next to Linley. Right. According to my clan's intelligence, in the years after he reached the saint level, Olivier had been roving about the various empires and engaging in training. According to the predictions of our intelligence unit, he should have defeated many saint-level experts. Linley nodded slightly. As soon as he had seen Olivier, Linley had the sense that this Olivier person was an extremely terrifying expert. Compared to Stella of the Radiant Church, he was even more formidable. Has he come for the purpose of doing battle on behalf of his little brother? Linley immediately began to quietly chant the words to a magic spell. Olivier was extremely famous. Given his reputation, Linley definitely wouldn't underestimate Olivier, nor did he dare to be insufficiently cautious. A gust of wind suddenly swirled about Linley. Wind-style spell of the 9th rank, wind shadow technique. Olivier finished listening to his younger brother's description of this battle. Bloomer intentionally made the situation sound even worse. Big brother, that Linley bullied me with his superior power. If it wasn't for the assistance of my elder fellow apprentice, I'm afraid. Olivier frowned. The Akerlund clan was actually a very ordinary, common clan. Their parents had died early on, and Olivier had to rely on himself to protect Bloomer and help raise Bloomer. Bloomer was Oliver's only family member. The two brothers shared a very deep love for each other. Kenyon. Olivier glanced at the nearby Kenyon. Thank you. Olivier, will definitely remember your benevolence in assisting us. Kenyon hurriedly said, Olivier, no need. Bloomer is my younger fellow apprentice. I can't just sit and watch. Olivier smiled at Kenyon, then stared coldly at his younger brother. He rebuked, Second brother, I told you long ago, unless the situation is a matter of life or death, you are not to use that forbidden technique. Given your current level of understanding, you are far from being able to use it properly. Do you know how harmful that most powerful attack was to you? The damage it caused was more severe than that of your broken arm. Bloomer lowered his head. In order to defeat Wharton, in the end, he had utilized a forbidden technique, and the damage done to himself by this forbidden technique wasn't something which light-style magic could heal. When Olivier had taught him this technique, he had instructed him to only use it in a life-or-death situation. Elder brother. I am sorry. Bloomer knew that Olivier was looking out for his interests. Olivier shook his head and sighed, then turned to look at the distant Linley. A fierce look appeared in his eyes, previously as tranquil as the depths of the seas. Olivier flew directly over. Olivier, wait. Knowing things were taking a turn for the worse, Emperor Johann immediately spoke out. Your Imperial Majesty, I will not spare someone who tried to kill my younger brother. Your Imperial Majesty, it's best if you don't get involved in this matter. Olivier didn't give Johann any face at all. Emperor Johann didn't say anything else either. He understood Oliver's temperament very well. But as far as Johann was concerned, both Linley and Olivier were important members of the empire. He didn't want these two geniuses to battle each other. Olivier hovered in mid-air, his long robes fluttering about him. His cold, fierce gaze was on Linley. Linley, come out. This explosive shout rocked the Colosseum like a thunderbolt, echoing non-stop within it. Come out! Come out! Come out! Everyone in the Colosseum held their breaths. Good heavens! The tickets they had bought were absolutely worth it. They had already seen two battles, but now, it seemed as though they were going to see an even more exciting one. The 80,000 pairs of eyes in the Colosseum all swung towards Linley. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 9, Linley vs. Olivier. Linley, come out. Oliver's explosive shout still echoed in the Colosseum, but Linley seemed to be deaf to it. He remained on one knee beside his younger brother's side, discussing something with his younger brother, seemingly not having heard Oliver's shout at all. Olivier, standing in mid-air, couldn't help but frown. What is Master Linley doing? Didn't he hear it? Impossible. Maybe he is afraid of Olivier. The people in the Colosseum were puzzled by Linley's lack of reaction. After letting out this angry shout, Olivier fell silent, staring coldly from mid-air at Linley. After finishing his conversation with his little brother, Linley turned and glanced upwards at the mid-air Olivier. In that instant, their gazes met. One on the ground, the other mid-air. Their gazes seemed to clash in the air like physical blows. Olivier. A hint of a smile was on Linley's face. He calmly said, ever since arriving in the O'Brien Empire, I've heard people praise you as the prodigy sword saint. To tell the truth, given that you reached the saint level at age 40, I don't see what makes you a prodigy. Oliver's forehead furrowed slightly. The combative nature of Linley's words caused all 80,000 onlookers to grow excited. Good heavens! These two geniuses were really being antagonistic towards each other. This would be the true duel between geniuses. A duel between Linley and Olivier would clearly be on a totally different level from the duel between Bloomer and Wharton. The battle between the older brothers definitely would be a duel between two of the utmost geniuses in the entire Yulan continent. This duel was about to start at any moment. Linley suddenly rose directly into the air above the dueling platform. Only after he came to a stop did the blur beneath him slowly disappear. What terrifying speed! Rumble, black draconic scales quickly covered Linley's entire body, and ferocious spikes erupted from his spine, his knees, his elbows, and his forehead. That black, scale-covered draconic tail flashed with a cold, gloomy light. Floating in the air, Linley stared at Olivier with those dark golden eyes. This was the first time he had seen such a terrifying transformation. Even the normally calm and composed Olivier had a flash of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly returned to his usual calm. Saint-level dragon blood warrior. Olivier looked at Linley, a terrifying aura of battle lust emanating from him. You aren't at the saint level pre-transformation. It seems that your current condition isn't the most powerful condition and time for a dragon blood warrior. Pity, such a pity. Olivier truly wanted to have a battle with one of the legendary peak stage saint-level dragon blood warriors. Olivier, a person should know their limits. Linley's cold voice rang out in the Colosseum. Do you think the likes of you are a match for the supreme warriors? The two genius saint levels stared at each other in mid-air. Everyone held their breaths, carefully watching this never-before-seen battle. Linley. Olivier extended his hand to his back. On Oliver's back, there were two long swords. One of them, a translucent sword, appeared very similar to Ice Dream. The other sword was pitch black. Against you, using the light shadow sword technique is enough. Olivier drew the long sword that was as translucent as a block of ice. This sword really was identical to Bloomer's, it was also an Ice Dream sword. With a flip of his hand, that devilish-looking blood-violet flexible sword appeared. Enough talk. Power is demonstrated through actions, not words. Linley paid no attention to Oliver's arrogance at all. A hint of self-confidence was in Oliver's eyes. Staring at the Ice Dream sword in his hands, he murmured, "After I reached the saint level and defeated Dylan, I have roamed the various countries. In total, I met 18 saint level experts, and won each battle. Unfortunately, not a single one of them was able to match me in speed." A series of surprised murmurs from the 80,000 onlookers. No one had known that Olivier had subsequently done battle against 18 saint-level experts. Olivier looked at Linley, a hint of self-confidence in his eyes. "In general, someone who cannot match me in speed will definitely lose." As he spoke, the Ice Dream sword in Oliver's hand began to shine as a white light began to swirl about the surface of the sword. Seeing this, Linley began to grow cautious. Linley could remember clearly how when Bloomer used this light shadow sword technique, the light on the Ice Dream sword had been golden. Only afterwards, when Bloomer had used the forbidden technique, did Ice Dream carry a hint of white light within it. Although it was just a hint of white light, the attack power of Ice Dream had multiplied several dozen times. Originally, Ice Dream had not been able to harm Wharton, but afterwards, it had been able to pierce through Wharton's palm, and then pierce past the scales on Wharton's chest. And that was just a hint of white light. But Oliver's? It was pure white. The power of this attack is most likely far more powerful than Bloomer's all-out desperation attack. Linley naturally was prepared for this. "Linley, I'm afraid that today, the world will have lost another genius," Olivier said in a quiet, calm voice, and then the white light began to flash repeatedly. With each flash of white light, another shadow Olivier appeared in the air above the dueling platform. The power and efficacy of this white light clearly was much higher than Bloomer's technique. In the blink of an eye, 108 shadow Oliviers had appeared in the sky. Everyone was shocked, speechless. Third brother. Yale and Reynolds were so nervous that they had begun to sweat already. Wharton, Barker, and his brothers, Rebecca, Lena, and Jen also watched nervously as well. The injured Bloomer, by contrast, watched with confidence. "Bloomer, your older brother's light shadow sword has already reached the perfected level, filling the skies with his shadows." The seated judge, monolithic sword Saint Hateson, smiled calmly at Bloomer. Bloomer's face was filled with confidence. The demonically ferocious-looking Linley, standing in mid-air, was now surrounded by 108 shadow Oliviers. Linley had to admit that the speed was absolutely astonishing. "Linley, are you ready?" Olivier actually gave Linley a warning. Clearly, Olivier was feeling extremely confident. Linley only chuckled calmly. A sudden white flash, utterly piercing to the eye. Even Linley had to squint, but right at that moment, the Ice Dream sword, covered with white light, reached Linley's head, piercing directly through it. "Ah!" Everyone let out simultaneous cries of alarm. Did the mighty Linley die just like that? But not a hint of blood came out from Linley's head, despite having been pierced through by Ice Dream. Suddenly, Linley slowly disappeared. It had just been a shadow. "You are indeed quite fast. Unfortunately, in front of me, you aren't qualified to be arrogant about it." Linley's voice rang out from the air 100 meters away. Olivier stared at the distant Linley, his face growing solemn. How incredibly fast! The eyes of the monolithic sword Saint Hatesun, watching from the judge's platform, shone brightly. Linley's speed wasn't one whit inferior to Oliver's. A wave of surprised murmurs filled the Colosseum. And then, silence once again. The viewers all felt as though their very souls had been shocked by this exciting battle. Is that so? Oliver's face grew cold. He had never met anyone faster than him. As for someone on par with his speed, the only one to date had been the monolithic sword saint. He didn't believe this youngster Linley could match him. After all, his speed was so fast that it had already exceeded human limits. This sword technique and movement technique was based on Oliver's insights into the elemental laws of light. This movement technique, in principle, could reach the speed of light itself. However, due to the limits of his body and his battle chi, he could only reach his current level of speed. You don't believe me? Linley chuckled. Another flash of white light. Linley began to move as well, as both reached a terrifying level of speed. Shadowed blurs everywhere. Countless shadows and blurs appeared everywhere. The 80,000 watchers felt their vision grow blurry. They simply couldn't tell which of the shadows were the true bodies of Linley and Olivier. The two had simply reached an absolutely terrifying level of speed. What astonishing speed! As they really began to compete, Linley couldn't help but feel surprised. If it wasn't for the fact that I had cast the wind shadow spell in advance, I wouldn't be able to match this Olivier in speed. Linley was fast, true. But the insights which Olivier had gained into the elemental laws of light were extremely powerful. However, supported by the most powerful speed-enhancing spell, the wind shadow spell, Linley's speed had been instantly raised to a level equivalent to Oliver's. Swish! A deep gouge suddenly appeared on the dueling platform. Clearly, it had been cut by a long sword. But then in the blink of an eye, a huge crater appeared with a thundering sound. The 80,000 viewers stared fixedly with wide eyes, not wanting to miss a thing. Mother asterisker, this is real speed. Our academy's teacher keeps on bragging, but compared with these guys? He's just a child who has barely learned to walk. Watching this battle, a youngster was so excited that his eyes were turning bloodshot. These 80,000 viewers had perhaps never seen this sort of high-speed battle before in their entire lives. This sort of battle would only occur when the two combatants were equally matched in speed. If one of them was too slow, the battle would have ended instantly. Bam! Linley's black draconic tail brushed past Oliver's clothes, viciously smashing against the dueling platform, causing every single inch of the platform to crack. In the next instant, Linley and Olivier both disappeared. The battle was so high speed that the onlookers could only barely see some shadows and blurs when the two lowered their speeds to exchange blows. But once the combatants returned to their maximum speed, not even their shadows could be seen. Whoosh! A tornado seemed to have sprung into being out of nowhere in the middle of the Colosseum. As the wind howled, the 80,000 onlookers could just barely make out two hazy figures standing in the middle of the wind, staring at each other. The fierce wind gradually died down. Olivier looked solemnly at Linley, the ice stream sword in his hands gleaming with all 7 colors of the rainbow, like a beautiful illusion. As for the demonic Linley, his draconic tail quivered behind him, and the blood-violet sword in his hand was covered with a strange violet light. A suppressive aura filled the Colosseum. I admit that your speed is no lower than mine. Olivier spoke out. Linley's dark golden eyes were fixed on his opponent. He said calmly, and your speed isn't any lower than mine either. After having competed just then, these two experts found that neither could gain an advantage over the other based on speed. If they continued to compete in such a manner, there would be no end. Dare you face my attacks head-on? Olivier stared Linley, a surge of an aura of battle lust erupting forth from him. Why wouldn't I dare? Linley's body began to emit that same ferocious battle lust. The 80,000 onlookers were so excited that they were beginning to quiver. Good heavens! These two experts were going to fight head-on now. Even the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was watching carefully. As for Bloomer, Wharton, and the others, they were each eager to see their older brother achieve victory. Linley and Olivier stared at each other in mid-air. In the same instant, the two of them moved in a direct line towards the other. Bang! Sudden sonic booms erupted from them as they reached a terrifying level of speed. While charging at Linley, Oliver's body seemed to have fragmented into 7 or 8 people, and the iced ream sword in his hands had transformed into 10 million sword shadows. You want to compete in sword speed? The blood-violet sword in Linley's hand flickered, then in the blink of an eye, Linley's body seemed to have been surrounded by a tornado while at the same time, countless flashes of violet light simultaneously struck at Olivier. Clang! 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 Countless clashing sounds could be heard, and then, Linley's iron whip-like draconic tail turned into a blur as well, smashing viciously against Olivier. Clang! The iced ream sword in Oliver's hand slammed against Linley's draconic tail, then he flew backwards at high speed. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 10, The Two Geniuses. Olivier immediately flew backwards to the viewing platform, staring at Linley with a hint of surprise in his eyes. But then, Olivier began to laugh loudly. Great, great, great. The speed of your sword attacks actually can match my Phantom Dream sword technique. You aren't bad either. You were actually able to block my rippling wind technique. Linley's cold voice rang out. Profound truths of the wind, rippling wind. Light shadow sword, Phantom Dream sword. The strength of these two techniques were equal. After praising their opponents, the two geniuses fell silent, carefully watching the other. Clearly, this exchange had resulted in both men viewing the other as equals. The tension in the Colosseum was so thick, it could be sliced with a knife. The terrifying, repressive aura caused the 80,000 viewers to feel as though they didn't even dare to breathe. If you can receive this next attack of mine, I can spare your life. A hint of appreciation towards Linley could be seen in Oliver's eyes. By receiving this next attack, you'll be demonstrating that you are qualified to be considered a rival of mine. As soon as he said these words, Barker and the others actually began to curse. *CK his grandmother, this Olivier wasn't able to show any superiority over Lord Linley at all, and he actually dares say something like, by receiving this next attack, you'll be qualified to be my rival? What sort of bullshit is this? Gates cursed loudly. Barker and the other brothers were muttering unhappily as well. Indeed, these words from Olivier made many of the people watching this battle unhappy. They had clearly seen how Olivier hadn't been able to seize any advantage. How could he say such a thing? This was simply too arrogant. Rival. Linley laughed calmly. If you can take this next sword of mine, you'll be qualified to be my rival as well. The two said the exact same things to each other. Haha, then have a taste of the power of my sword of the Aurora. Olivier laughed loudly. And then, he flew once more at high speed directly towards Linley. Linley laughed coldly. Linley, too, began to prepare the second stage of the profound truths of the wind, tempos of the wind. This was a single target sword attack, relying on ultimate speed and power. Boom. Sonic booms erupted. Linley's ferocious draconic tail swaying behind him, Linley transformed into a blur as he also charged straight forward, the blood-violet sword in his hands transforming into a brilliant violet light. The brilliant white aura covering Oliver's iced ream sword suddenly expanded dramatically, transforming iced ream and making it as dazzling as the sun itself. The piercing white light forced everyone watching the battle to unconsciously narrow their eyes. The most powerful attack of the light shadow sword technique, Sword of the Aurora. The most powerful attack of Linley's profound truths of the wind, tempos of the wind. That devilish violet light moved as fast and as ferociously as a bolt of lightning, but at the same time it carried with it the gentleness of the spring wind. These totally opposite auras were manifested at the same time with this attack. That sort of strange tempo caused many people to feel a strange fear in their hearts. What a powerful sword attack! The eyes of monolithic sword Saint Hatesun lit up. He could totally sense how powerful this attack by Linley was. This sort of strange, uniquely intersecting tempo caused a natural wind edge to form on the surface of Linley's blood-violet sword. Or, to put it more accurately, it was a spatial edge. The devilish violet light. The piercing white light. They intersected in the middle of the air above the Colosseum. Boom! The terrifying force of the collision blasted out in every direction. The dueling platform below was slashed open by countless invisible blades, with many gouges appearing in its surface. At the same time, a frighteningly powerful wave of force emanated in each direction, causing the 80,000 viewers to sway and stumble. Crunch! Some of the cups located near the edges of the dueling platform were actually shattered by the force of the wind. Those onlookers held on for dear life against their stone seats as their bodies swayed. Only after that wild blast of wind left did the Colosseum slowly return to its normal calm. But to the shock of many of the watchers, many of their outer layer of clothes had been blown off of them by the wind. What terrifying force! Everyone stared in astonishment at the two experts in mid-air. At this time, Olivier and Linley were silently staring at each other in mid-air. Tempos of the wind. Sword of the aurora. Once again, they were equally matched. Olivier stared at Linley, his gaze slowly brightening. A hint of a smile actually appeared on Oliver's face. Linley, what was the name of that sword technique you just used? Linley didn't try to dissemble. Profound truths of the wind, second stage, tempos of the wind. Tempos of the wind, tempos of the wind. Thinking back to the attack Linley had just used, Olivier looked at Linley with eyes filled with approval. Linley, I can hardly believe that you are a young grandmaster sculptor as well. To be so accomplished, but not yet be even 30 years old. I admire you. Oliver's attitude towards Linley had totally changed. I previously said that if you could withstand this blow from me, I would spare your life. I will keep my word. From today onwards, your name has now been added to my list of rivals. I eagerly anticipate your growth and development. Olivier said with a smile. Linley frowned. This Olivier was simply too arrogant. Barker and his brothers were standing below them. Gates, the most irascible of the lot, immediately jumped to his feet. F***ck his grandmother. Olivier, you didn't beat our lord. How dare you prattle on and swagger about like a bushy-tailed wolf? F***ck, I hate people like you. This loud shout caused the countless onlookers to be unable to control their laughter. It must be said that many people agreed with Gates' words. The words which Olivier had just said were the words an elder expert would say to a junior. They had a lecturing aura to it. He had even said, I look forward to your growth and I will spare your life. If Olivier had truly won, others would acknowledge these words as having bearing and composure. But he hadn't won. Nobody could sense that Olivier had held even the slightest bit of advantage. If they continued fighting, it was hard to say who would win. HRMPH Olivier sneered coldly. His cold, gloomy eyes swept the surrounding area, and the Colosseum immediately fell silent. Olivier looked at Linley. Calmly, he said, 6 years ago, you would indeed have been able to stalemate me. But now, you just barely qualify for me to utilize the obsidian sword. But if I use it then today you, a genius, would definitely lose your life. Oliver's calm voice echoed in the Colosseum. Only now did most people in the Colosseum remember, Olivier had 2 swords on his back. The iced ream sword was only one of them. Obsidian sword? Obsidian sword? Olivier, you've truly mastered it? At the judges' stand, the monolithic sword Saint Hatesun spoke out, attracting the attention of everyone present. From the looks of it, the monolithic sword Saint Hatesun, had some sort of prior relationship with Olivier. Olivier turned to look at the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. In a calm voice, he said, "Mr. Hatesun, thank you for the advice you gave me 6 years ago. It resulted in me gaining certain insights. 3 years of battles, followed by 3 years of quiet meditation in the desolate mountains. I have now mastered the obsidian sword, which is even more powerful than the light-shadow technique." The Colosseum was filled with cries of astonishment. Even more powerful than the light-shadow sword technique. No wonder Lord Olivier said that he was sparing Master Linley's life. That year when he defeated Lord Dillon, Lord Olivier had used the light-shadow sword technique. Back then, Lord Olivier only had a single sword on his back, but now he has 2. 10 years. He really has improved. Many people sighed in amazement at Oliver's prowess. The power he had demonstrated just now wasn't his true power. How terrifying was Olivier truly? My big brother. Wharton knew that Linley was fighting for his sake, and now, he was beginning to worry for Linley. Wharton was worried, but Barker and his brothers, on the contrary, weren't worried at all. "Wharton, his lordship hasn't revealed his true power yet." Barker laughed as he glanced at Wharton. "When his lordship sparred with you, he only used the blood-violet flexible sword. He didn't dare test his true attack against you." "Right. Linley has an even more terrifying adamantine heavy sword," Zisler said solemnly. Having been with Linley for so long, Zisler and the Barker brothers knew exactly how terrifyingly powerful the adamantine heavy sword was. When Linley was only at the peak stage of the 9th rank, his usage of the 100-layered waves technique with the adamantine heavy sword would have been irresistible by even saint-level undying warriors despite them being known for their defense. Even most mid-stage saint-level experts would probably suffer a severe injury. And now, Linley's base power and battle chi were all at the saint level. If he were to once more utilize his profound truths of the earth, most likely even peak stage saint level experts wouldn't be able to take a blow from him. After all, the vibrational attacks which Linley had developed based on his insights was simply too terrifying. Battle chi and muscle power virtually did nothing to defend against it. "Linley, I eagerly anticipate your future challenge," Olivier said with a calm laugh. Olivier was also someone who pursued the peak of power. A good rival was hard to find. For Linley to be so powerful in his 20s meant that in the future, he would definitely be a good rival for Olivier. Lord Olivier really does have the bearing of an expert. Many people sighed in praise. But Bloomer, located near the judge's stand, was unhappy. Why can't elder brother simply just kill Linley and get it over with? The spikes protruding from Linley's head gleamed with a metallic light. Olivier. Linley's dark golden eyes stared at Olivier. "I told you long ago. A person should know their limits. Do you think your obsidian sword is very powerful?" "HRM. Oliver's face changed as he looked at Linley. Linley didn't know what was good for him. But Linley extended his hand. Suddenly, an astonishing azure-black heavy sword appeared in his palm. "My most powerful weapon, the adamantine heavy sword." Linley stared at Olivier. "Once I use the adamantine heavy sword, even I can't fully control its power. I might kill you." Olivier started. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was stunned as well. Bloomer stared at the mid-air Linley in astonishment as well. The 80,000 viewers had all fallen silent. In mid-air, the ferocious dragon-formed Linley wielded his adamantine heavy sword and stared coldly at Olivier. "From what you are saying, it sounds like your obsidian sword is very powerful. I want to see for myself if your obsidian sword is more powerful, or if my adamantine heavy sword is more powerful." "Adamantine heavy sword? Adamantine." Olivier and Hatesun were both secretly shocked. The legendary material which supposedly even deity-level experts would find difficult to break? Haha, good. Wonderful. Olivier began to laugh loudly. I take back my earlier words. I, too, want to see if your adamantine heavy sword is everything you claim it is. Linley, be careful. My obsidian sword might just claim your life. As he spoke, Olivier sheathed his ice stream sword. Then slowly drew out his obsidian sword. The obsidian sword was the same size and shape as the ice stream sword, but its pitch-black surface looked very ordinary. However, when Olivier placed the obsidian sword in front of him, a layer of cold, dark light began to flow over its surface. That black light seemed capable of devouring everything around it. The obsidian sword's techniques were developed based on my insights into the elemental laws of darkness. Olivier stared coldly at Linley. Linley wielded the adamantine heavy sword in his hands. Because it had been struck by heavenly lightning when it had been forged, the adamantine heavy sword's surface gleamed with that azure light. The adamantine heavy sword's techniques were developed based on my insights into the elemental laws of the earth. Linley's dark golden eyes were fixed upon the opponent as well. One wielded an obsidian sword. The other wielded the adamantine heavy sword. Two ultimate geniuses. 80,000 pairs of eyes in the Colosseum were focused on them. The entire Colosseum seemed to be holding its breath. Both Bloomer and Wharton began to grow anxious and nervous. Right now, no one knew who would win, Linley, or Olivier. Bang! Bang! Two terrifying sonic booms erupted, as the two people charged directly towards each other from hundreds of meters away. But just at this moment, the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, who had been seated at the judge's stand, suddenly disappeared from his seat. He took 3 steps in mid-air, moving as fast as lightning, suddenly interposing between the two. Stay your hands. An earth-colored ripple of power erupted forth from the body of the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, striking simultaneously against Linley and Olivier. Linley had the sensation of being struck by countless meteors, and his body was repelled backwards by several dozen meters. Olivier had also been knocked backwards in the same way. Linley and Olivier both turned to stare at Haidsun. The monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, laughed calmly as he looked at each of them. Linley. Olivier. Both of you are incredible geniuses of the entire Yulon continent. You are both so young. Judging from your words, both the adamantine heavy sword technique and the obsidian sword technique are extremely vicious, dangerous sword techniques, which even you two are unable to fully control. If this battle were truly to continue, then one of you will definitely die, or perhaps even both of you. For two such geniuses to fall would be a huge loss to the entire Yulon continent. I suggest that we bring this duel to an end for now. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 11, The Challenge. Stop fighting? The 80,000 viewers all began to mumble in unison upon hearing these words from the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun. Some even began to quietly curse him. Linley and Olivier were definitely two of the most brilliant men in the entirety of the Yulon continent. Many warriors would literally be willing to give up their lives if it meant they could see such a battle between two such genius saint-level experts. But just as the battle was getting to the most exciting part, the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, had popped out. How could they not be angry? But the person stopping the battle was Haidsun, the number 1 saint level in the world. It's best if we have this battle come to an end here and now. Housekeeper Hyree's forehead was covered in sweat. Not just Housekeeper Hyree. Hillman, Wharton, and the others were all worrying for Linley as well. Oliver's performance hadn't been one whit inferior to Linley's, and that obsidian sword technique seemed to be very strange as well. Linley's profound truths of the earth was powerful, true. But would the attack which Olivier had developed based on his understanding of the elemental laws of darkness necessarily be any weaker than Linley's profound truths of the earth? Hadn't Olivier himself said that he was unable to control the power of the obsidian sword once unleashed? Because the monolithic sword saint Haidsun had suddenly interrupted, Linley and Olivier were standing on opposite ends of the Colosseum in mid-air, staring at each other, with Haidsun between them. 3 saint-level experts. 2 were ultimate geniuses, while the third was reputed to be the most powerful saint-level expert in the world. Stop fighting. Olivier glanced at Haidsun. Linley glanced at Haidsun as well. This Haidsun's power really is astonishing. That technique he displayed just now definitely wasn't just based on pure battle chi. It should have been some sort of defensive technique developed through his mastery of the laws of the earth. Linley could totally sense that the earth-colored wave Haidsun had emitted earlier contained layers of wave-like energy. However, he wouldn't necessarily be able to withstand my profound truths of the earth. Linley was still extremely confident in the power of his ultimate attack. In truth, when charging against each other just now, both Linley and Olivier had both been in the charge-up phase. At Linley and Oliver's levels, as peak stage saint-level experts, they wouldn't waste any energy at all. Both the profound truths of the earth as well as Oliver's attack would wait until when the blows landed on the opponent before suddenly allowing their power to erupt. Many of the victims of the profound truths of the earth, when first struck by the adamantine heavy sword, initially hadn't sensed any danger at all. But then suddenly, they would sense layers upon layers of vibrational wave attacks transmitting into their internal organs. Just then, Haidsun had been able to push aside both Linley and Olivier with one technique, true. But that was because neither Linley nor Olivier had used their ultimate attacks against Haidsun. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for Haidsun to block them. Haha, Olivier, Linley. Emperor Johann stood up now. Under the gaze of 80,000 people, Emperor Johann walked off the judge's platform and said in a loud voice, Olivier, Linley, this battle between the two of you has already been an incredible sight, and expanded our horizons. What's more, neither of you have a serious grudge against each other that can only be resolved in death. Emperor Johann didn't wish for either Linley or Olivier to die. If these two geniuses remained alive, then the O'Brien Empire's influence in the Yulan continent would be even stronger. Linley and Olivier glanced at each other. Fine. Olivier nodded, laughing calmly. When Brother Linley had received my light shadow sword attack, I already had lost my desire to continue fighting. However, I was partially at fault in this affair as well. Olivier looked at Linley. Brother Linley's power exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect that the sword techniques he revealed at the beginning were just the surface of his abilities. Olivier revealed a smile towards Linley. I admit, Brother Linley's power is no weaker than my own. Clearly, Olivier was indicating a willingness to be friendly towards Linley. He even addressed him as Brother Linley. The obsidian sword's technique was extremely powerful, but Linley's adamantine heavy sword technique was also extremely powerful. If these two geniuses really did insist on going all out today and fight to the point of death, it really would be a waste and not worth it. Since Olivier had already spoken in a conciliatory manner, Linley wouldn't press things either. After all, he had just entered the O'Brien Empire recently. It was best that he not create too many enemies. Then let's have this battle come to an end. Linley's calm voice echoed in the Colosseum, and the 80,000 viewers understood that the battle between these two ultimate geniuses wouldn't continue today. But immediately afterwards, an ear-splitting, thunderous applause filled the entire Colosseum. All of the watchers were cheering at the top of their lungs. Although the duel had come to an end, they were still uncontrollably excited. Olivier! 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 Linley! 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 Those joyous, thunderous waves of sound assaulted each person's ears. All of them were cheering for their idols. In this moment, they had already forgotten that today's duel had actually been supposed to be between Wharton and Bloomer. Clearly. Although Wharton and Bloomer were geniuses, compared to their respective elder brothers, there was still a huge gap between them in every aspect. The astonishing power and might of Linley and Olivier had totally overawed every single person in the Colosseum. Seeing the two end their battle, the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun, felt very gratified as well. At this time, Linley immediately flew down towards his own side. The joyous roars of the Colosseum continued unabated. By now, in the eyes of the crowd, Linley had already been vaulted to the same level and status of Olivier. If one factored in Linley's youth and his mastery of stone sculpting, perhaps Linley was even more worthy than Olivier of the title of prodigy. Big bro, from his seated position, Wharton saw Linley fly down. He immediately called out to him in an excited voice. "Lord!" Barker and his brothers went to welcome him as well. Jen, Rebecca, and Lena all let out sighs of relief as they, too, went forward to excitedly welcome him. Linley returned to his normal human form and put on a long robe. "Lord, keep fighting. That Olivier definitely isn't a match for you, your lordship. I refuse to believe he'll be able to withstand your profound truths of the earth attack," Gates said in a quiet, unhappy voice. Barker and the others all knew exactly how powerful Linley's profound truths of the earth was. They all believed Linley was capable of winning. But Linley shook his head and laughed. "Don't underestimate Olivier. For him to be able to create that special attack, light shadow sword, means that the power of his obsidian sword would definitely be astonishing. You must consider this, I was able to gain insights into certain profound truths, but does that mean others are unable to? The elemental laws are as vast and boundless as the ocean, and my insights are but a tiny drop of water in that ocean." Barker and the others all nodded as though they understood. But right at this moment, a voice rang out from mid-air above the Colosseum. "Mr. Haitsun. Do you still remember that battle between us 6 years ago?" Linley immediately turned his head to stare at the sky. The person who spoke those words was the prodigy sword saint, Olivier. Oliver's eyes were filled with light, and he stared at the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun, who was just about to fly downwards. Haitsun came to a halt, turning to look at Olivier. Nodding, he said, 6 years ago, on a night with a full moon. Of course I remember that battle. Your speed left a deep impression on me." Olivier looked at Haitsun. Solemnly, he said, "I roamed through many kingdoms and gained victory in all of my battles against the various experts of the other empires. I lost to you, and only you. 6 years, 6 full years. During these 6 years, I developed my Blackstone sword technique specifically to deal with you." The Colosseum instantly went silent. It seemed as though there was quite a bit of history between these two saint-level experts. "Oh, to deal with me?" Haitsun laughed calmly. "You believe that your obsidian sword is capable of breaking my defense?" One of the most important reasons why Haitsun was known as the monolithic sword saint was because he possessed an extremely powerful defense. Many peak stage saint-level experts weren't able to even break through it, much less injure him. Olivier thought back to their battle 6 years ago. That was an utter humiliation. No matter how he attacked Haitsun, he couldn't scratch Haitsun at all. Instead, he was lightly wounded by the impact of each blow. What's more, Haitsun hadn't been slower than him at all. Domination. Although Olivier was also a peak stage saint level, compared to Haitsun, he had been utterly dominated. It was as though they were on totally different levels. His reputation as the #1 saint-level expert was definitely not unearned. "We'll know whether or not I can break your defense if we give it a test, right? Mr. Haitsun, today at the Colosseum, I formally issue you a challenge. If you accept, then in 3 months, we'll duel outside the city," Olivier said. Olivier had consumed a large amount of his battle chi today, in his battle against Linley. He was no longer in peak shape. "Challenge." Haitsun furrowed his forehead, but a hint of a smile was on his face. The Colosseum immediately began to be filled with roars of excitement. The prodigy sword saint, Olivier, had openly challenged the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun. Many people were so excited that their faces were turning red. Everyone turned to look at the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun. Fine. I accept. Haitsun smiled and nodded. 3 months from now, I will definitely sample the power of the obsidian sword technique which you developed over these past 6 years. It definitely will not disappoint you. Oliver's face was filled with the utmost confidence. The smile on Haitsun's face became even brighter. 6 years ago, having been dominated to the point where he had no fighting spirit left, Olivier had learned how powerful Haitsun's defense was. But Olivier was still this confident. Olivier was no fool. Clearly, he must really have something he felt he could count on. Won't disappoint me? I truly hope it will be as you say. Haitsun was filled with some anticipation. It had been a long time since he had encountered an opponent who could pose a threat to him. In 3 short steps, the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun, somehow once more appeared at the judge's platform. As for Olivier, he flew to the side of his little brother. The entire Colosseum was filled with the sound of murmuring discussions. Linley had suddenly taken to the field of battle and easily defeated Kenyon, and then had fought Olivier to a standstill. And now, Olivier had challenged the monolithic sword saint, Haitsun, to a battle. This chain of events had truly excited them no end. Everyone. At this moment, the silver-haired old man returned to the dueling platform. Just now, I was about to announce the results of the duel. But I didn't expect that Lord Olivier would arrive. The silver-haired old man's face was covered in smiles. That made me extremely excited. This was the most exciting day in my long life. Lord Oliver's battle against Lord Linley is something I trust none of you will ever forget for the rest of your lives. Just look at the dueling platform, and then look at those flagpoles. The battle just now had caused the already cracked dueling platform to be riddled with gaping holes. Most of the flagpoles around the dueling platform had been snapped in half, and many people's clothes had been blown to different corners of the Colosseum. It was a disaster scene. But this disaster scene made the 80,000 people begin to laugh. Haha, enough talk. Everyone already knows the results of the earlier duel between Wharton and Bloomer. Bloomer managed to squeak out a victory by a narrow margin. The silver-haired old man laughed towards Emperor Johann. His Imperial Majesty has a few words he wishes to say. I hope everyone will listen closely. After speaking, the silver-haired old man left the platform. Emperor Johann now rose to his feet. Some people in the Colosseum looked towards Emperor Johann, while the others looked at Linley, Olivier, and Haitsun, the saint-level experts. Today has been the most exciting day in our life. Whether it was the duel between Wharton and Bloomer, or their brothers, Linley and Olivier, what we witnessed was extremely thrilling. Emperor Johann revealed a hint of a smile on his face. Everyone knows that both Wharton and Bloomer have asked for the hand of our daughter, the 7th princess, in marriage. After seeing both of these brilliant young men in action today, we have already made our decision. We have decided that on March 15th, at the Martial Palace, we shall openly announce who will be the one to wed our 7th princess. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 12, Front Courtyard as busy as a marketplace. Linley, Wharton, Bloomer, and Olivier almost simultaneously turned to stare at Emperor Johann in surprise. On March 15th, the Emperor would announce who would marry the 7th princess. In the past, Emperor Johann had kept delaying, without seeming to be the slightest bit impatient. Neither Wharton nor Bloomer had imagined that Emperor Johann would suddenly say such a thing. Nina, Wharton turned to look at Nina. Nina shook her head, also confused. I don't know anything. My imperial father didn't tell me anything about this. She, too, looked frantically at Emperor Johann, but as the 7th princess was a member of imperial clan, her marriage was not something she could design on her own. It was completely up to Emperor Johann to decide. Princess. At this moment, a palace attendant came over. His Imperial Majesty is about to leave. It is time to return to the palace. Nina nodded. Emperor Johann had forbidden her to leave the palace. The only reason she was able to meet Warden this time was because of this duel in the Colosseum. After bidding farewell to Warden, Nina followed the Imperial clan back and left. Linley and Warden's forces also withdrew from the Colosseum. Olivier. As Linley left via one of the passageways, he glanced at Olivier, and saw that Olivier was also glancing at him. These two ultimate geniuses exchanged stares, then turned their heads and left the Colosseum. Ever since the 80,000 onlookers had witnessed the events in the Colosseum on this day, February 4th, the news about the duel which had taken place at the Colosseum took the imperial capital by storm, filling the entire imperial capital with excitement. Many people from other cities and other provinces, upon leaving, brought back the news of this duel to their own hometowns as well. Linley had easily defeated Kenyon, and then fought to a stalemate with Olivier. Olivier had then challenged Haidsun. These three events quickly became well known, and the rumors of these events spread out at astonishing speed. Linley's reputation quickly became well known in the imperial capital, and beyond as well, spreading in every direction. The imperial capital. Boulder Street. Outside Count Warden's manor, one carriage after another came, all filled with people coming to visit Linley. Within the inner courtyard of the manor, Linley, Yale, and Reynolds were seated together, chatting and laughing. Although there were many nobles and famous people clustered together at the front courtyard, Linley couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. Actually, those nobles expected and understood this in heart. Would someone of Linley's status go personally welcome them? At Linley's level, ordinary, worldly trappings of power no longer meant anything to him. Even the emperor would be extremely courteous when dealing with saint-level experts and wouldn't dare to put on airs. Without question. Now that the Baruch clan had produced someone like Linley, even if Linley were to never become a noble within the empire, and even though Warden was just a count, the Baruch clan had naturally become an extremely surpassing clan within the imperial capital. Third bro, you've been hiding your power and your talents, but now that you've exploded forth onto the scene, you've really shocked quite a few people. Yale laughed loudly. Reynolds nodded repeatedly as well. Right, right. I imagine the Radiant Church has a terrible headache right now. Yale and Reynolds knew about Linley's affairs with the Radiant Church. Given the Radiant Church's power, for them to kill Linley at his current level was virtually impossible. This was especially true given that Linley was currently in the imperial capital of the O'Brien Empire. The Radiant Church wouldn't dare send any saint-level experts over, for fear that the war god would misunderstand. This was the war god's territory, after all. Dealing with the Radiant Church. Linley laughed calmly. I've already killed the principal target of my quest for revenge. As for dealing with the rest of the Radiant Church, I'm not in a particular rush. Right now, I'm no longer afraid of the people of the Radiant Church. But dealing with the Radiant Church, I don't have enough power yet. The Radiant Church had quite a few peak-stage saint-level experts. The currently reigning Holy Emperor, Haydn's. The spiritual leader of the ascetics, Lord Fallen Leaf. The praetor of the ecclesiastical tribunal, Asano. Special executor, Stella. And the leader of the zealots. 5 experts, with Stella most likely being the weakest of them. As for the other 4, none of them could be underestimated. Even against Stella, Linley wouldn't be able to win that easily. The reason why Linley had been able to easily defeat Kenyon was only because Kenyon was nothing more than a mid-stage saint-level expert. When my human form reaches the saint level and my skills as Magus reach the saint level, Linley's eyes flashed with a fierce light. When your human form reaches the saint level. Yale and Reynolds exchanged glances. They couldn't help but feel worried for the future Radiant Church. If Linley were to reach the saint level in his human form, then as soon as he transformed, just relying on physical strength, battle chi, defense, and speed, he would already be at a terrifying level of power. Supreme warriors were hailed as the most powerful of saint levels. They were nothing to laugh at. Such a powerful foundation combined with Linley's profound truths of the wind and profound truths of the earth. They believed that once Linley reached the saint level in his human form, then his two profound truths would also advance in level. And then, once he reached the saint level as a magus, he would be invincible in close combat, and at long range, the spells of a saint-level magus were unbeatable. If his opponents were to use human wave tactics, a single annihilating magical spell would be able to destroy them. Too terrifying. Yale and Reynolds were frightened just thinking about it. The current Linley was already a peak-stage saint-level expert. If in the future, his power increased tenfold in every aspect, who could possibly stop him? Enough about this topic for now. Linley laughed calmly. Yale laughed and nodded. Third bro, do you know? My old man keeps on telling me to handle this affair or handle that affair, but after hearing that you had arrived here, he stopped pressing me. In fact, he supported me spending more time with you. I must say, my conglomerate really did make a killing off this deal. We got you as one of our elders so cheaply. Previously, at the provincial capital of Basel, Yale had given Linley an elder's medal. Even if you didn't give me that medal, if the Dawson conglomerate had any difficulties, given our relationship, Boss Yale, of course I would help out. Linley laughed. Yale felt a sense of warmth and gratitude in his heart. Beautifully said. Come, cheers. Yale immediately raised his cup in a toast, and Linley and Reynolds joined him, laughing. People's hearts were hard to discern, especially after growing up. It would be hard for Yale, Linley, and Reynolds to easily trust people now, but towards those good friends they made in their carefree, worry-free childhood years, they felt nothing but the utmost trust. It is a rare thing for someone to be able to have a true bosom friend. Linley and the others all felt very fortunate to have such good brothers. Third bro. Reynolds pursed his lips. You really showed off your godlike power this time at the Colosseum. Even our Dunstan clan has sent people to come meet you. They sent someone. Linley was startled. Who? One of my paternal uncles. Reynolds said disdainfully. But he didn't have a chance to even see you. Linley nodded. Linley had refused to meet with any of the people who had come to pay a visit with him. Even the people of the imperial clan had been summarily ignored. If your clan truly wants to meet with me, just give me a heads up, and I'll go meet with them. He would of course give face to one of his brothers. No need. Reynolds shook his head. I really don't see eye to eye with the people in my clan. Anyhow, the point is, third bro, you've really become famous. This makes my life easier as well. Many people in the clan are now much nicer to me as well. They all know that I'm your brother. Shortling, Reynolds looked at Linley. Third bro, in the future, if anything good comes your way, you have to take care of me, your bro, you know. You little punk. Seeing the impish expression on Reynolds' face, Linley couldn't help but laugh while berating him. You've been in the army for 7 or 8 years now, but you still act this way. The Four Close Friends of Dormitory 1987. Yale was the playboy type, while Reynolds was the type who feared neither heaven nor earth and would dare to do anything. Third bro, Boss Yale, I'm only this one way in front of you guys. In front of those common soldiers, I always have a hard-ass look on my face. Reynolds intentionally put on a stern, solemn expression. It had to be said that once Reynolds hardened his face, he did indeed have the look of a soldier in his eyes and demeanor. After chatting and joking with his close friends, Linley's face grew solemn. Boss Yale, fourth bro. There's something I need you two to help me plan out. What is it? Reynolds and Yale looked at Linley. Given Linley's current status, what did he have to worry about? This has to do with my little brother. That day, Emperor Johann publicly announced that on March 15, he would openly announce at the Marshall Palace who the seventh princess will marry. Linley's face was very solemn. Reynolds and Yale both nodded. My little brother, Wharton, and the seventh princess share a deep love for each other. Without the seventh princess, I fear that my little brother will be in pain for a long, long time. I don't want to see something like that to happen once again, and to my own little brother. Linley's voice was very low. Reynolds and Yale exchanged glances. They still remembered how Linley had actually coughed out blood that year when he and Alice had broken up, and then carved out the sculpture awakening from the dream over 10 days and 10 nights, not drinking or eating anything. Although Linley didn't say anything, they both understood that this had deeply hurt Linley. Third bro, go ahead. Tell us what you want us to do. Yale said directly, and Reynolds nodded by his side as well. Linley nodded. Right now, I have two options planned. If Emperor Johann plans to choose my little brother, then that will be a joyous event. But, if he chooses Bloomer. Linley's face turned cold. At that time, I won't give a damn about the fact that he's the emperor, or how powerful Bloomer's older brother is. I will help my little brother and go bring the seventh princess out of the palace and allow the two of them to elope together. If anyone tries to stop me, I will kill them. A killing intent could be seen in Linley's eyes. Reynolds and Yale couldn't help but feel their hearts shiver. Others might not understand, but they understood clearly. The 5 Barker brothers which Linley had brought with him were actually undying warriors. And 3 of them had saint-level power. And then there was the Black-Cloud Panther and Bibi. 6 saint-level experts. Once Linley decided to go all out, especially with Bibi who was no weaker than Linley, the entire imperial capital would no doubt begin to tremble from the repercussions of 6 trouble-making saint-level experts. I hope His Imperial Majesty chooses Wharton. Reynolds and Yale were both praying in their hearts. Third bro. Yale looked solemnly at Linley. Don't be impatient. Even if you have to bring the seventh princess out by force, there's no need to push things to such a state. I know. Linley laughed calmly. I'm only saying, if someone tries to stop me, then I'll kill them. My little brother and I naturally don't have as firm an understanding of the affairs of the imperial capital as your clans, which is why I hope the two of you can help me think about this issue. The Dunstan clan and the Dawson clan both had very deep roots of power, and knew many things about the events occurring in the imperial capital. Third bro, set your mind at ease. My Dawson conglomerate's forces are quite numerous. We even have a number of palace attendants and maids who will obey the words of the conglomerate. Yale said confidently. Money was a wondrous thing. The power of money could be extremely large. When I go back, I will speak with my old man. Don't worry. My old man will definitely help and support you. Yale laughed. Linley was certain about this as well. If the chairman of the Dawson conglomerate were to leak this information to the emperor, he probably wouldn't see much of a benefit. After all, the Dawson conglomerate didn't lack for money. But as for experts, the emperor couldn't simply order a saint-level expert to serve the Dawson conglomerate, right? You should take primary responsibility for this affair of third bros. My clan's authority primarily resides in the military, after all. Reynolds knew his own limits. Linley nodded. Then I'll be counting on you, Boss Yale. Linley said seriously. Yale nodded confidently. After the deaths of his parents, Linley had only a single relative left, Wharton. No matter what, he wouldn't let his little brother be hurt. If Emperor Johann were to select Wharton, then that would be wonderful. But if he didn't, Linley wasn't adverse to revealing the true depths of power available to him and forcibly bring Nina out. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 13, Kalen's Arrival. The night descended. In Chan, the imperial capital of the O'Brien Empire, the most military powerful empire in the Yulon continent, life went on as usual. Aside from a few crowded nightlife streets, the city was calm and peaceful. East Chan. Boulder Street. After receiving countless carriages over the past few days, Count Wharton's manor gradually regained its usual calm as well. Within Count Wharton's halls, Linley, housekeeper Hyrie, Hillman, Barker, and his brothers, Zisler, and the other core members of the team were in a meeting. They were discussing how to handle the seventh princess affair. If His Imperial Majesty really were to select Bloomer, then I will act in accordance with your plans, Big Brother. Wharton didn't hesitate in the slightest. Hillman nodded solemnly as well. The soldiers of the Empire are famous for their courage and fearlessness, while the seventh princess is located deep within the palace. If you are discovered while sneaking within, even if you manage to slaughter your way out, no doubt there will be countless deaths. After arriving at the O'Brien Empire, Hillman had been stunned by the spirit and aura of the Empire. Martial. The entire Empire venerated the war god, and the only deity they worshipped was the war god. This nation deeply respected powerful experts. One could easily sense that just by looking at the near-crazed reactions of those onlookers in the Colosseum. Cowards who fled from battle would be viewed with disdain by the Empire. The O'Brien Empire was located in the northern part of the Yulan continent. The entire empire was often fairly cold all year around, which had also helped the citizens of the empire in developing their endurance. Uncle Hillman, if we are to go bring out the seventh princess, we definitely won't just send a single person. Although the soldiers of the empire are very powerful, as far as I can tell, they shouldn't be able to pose a threat to us. The only potential complication is that there are saint-level experts living in the palace. The emperor didn't have the ability to demand a saint-level expert be his personal bodyguard, but the war god would of course station saint-level experts within the palace to help defend it. The value of the items in the imperial treasury and various hidden treasure rooms were more important than the emperor himself. Naturally, they would have to be protected. If someone dared to barge into the imperial palace to take a princess, those resident saint-level experts might just interfere and stop them. Linley was confident in his ability to deal with saint-level experts by himself, but if he was bringing an ordinary person like Nina with him, it would be tricky. Linley looked at Bibi, who was resting on his legs. Bibi. When the time comes, it will be up to you. Bibi immediately leapt to his feet, hopping onto the table. HRM. Up to me. Bibi rolled his beady little black eyes as he looked at Wharton. Little Wharton, don't worry. Bibi, will definitely bring your woman back to you totally unharmed. Bibi will go. Wharton was stunned. Little Wharton, don't you trust me, Bibi? Bibi raised his little head proudly, widening his eyes and staring angrily at Wharton. Wharton hurriedly shook his head. It isn't that I don't trust you. It's, the Imperial Palace will definitely have saint-level experts residing there. If they fight against each other, will Bibi really able to bring a weak person like Nina safely? Wharton, given Bibi's level of power, bringing the seventh princess out of the Imperial Palace shouldn't be a problem. Linley had quite a bit of confidence in Bibi's abilities. Bibi's speed is the fastest I've ever seen. The fastest? Big bro, are you saying he's even faster than you and Olivier? Wharton said in surprise. Bibi's speed is the fastest speed I have ever seen in a magical beast. The Black Cloud Panther, Haru, suddenly spoke up from his position lying on the ground. Black Cloud Panthers were famed for their speed. When they were at the mountain range of magical beasts, Bibi was actually only an early stage 9th rank. But even then, Bibi was already almost on par with the Black Cloud Panther. After 5 or 6 years had passed, Bibi's speed had surpassed the Black Cloud Panthers by a large margin, reaching a new, terrifying level. And now, after having reached the saint level, Bibi's speed had soared once again. Of course he is faster than Olivier. Linley laughed as he rubbed Bibi's little head. Wharton, let me tell you, Bibi's speed and defense are the greatest I have ever seen. In the past, When I was at the Ernst Institute, BB was still in his growing phase and had the power of a magical beast of the 7th or 8th rank. But even after being struck by the dying blow of a peak stage 9th ranked armored Razorback WYRM, he still only suffered a severe wound. This was the first time Wharton had heard of this. It was the first time Zisler and the others had heard this story as well. How is that possible? They were all stunned. An armored Razorback WYRM was one of the most terrifying dragon-type magical beasts. When I encountered Haru in the mountain range of magical beasts, Haru wasn't able to injure BB at all with his attacks. At that time, BB was only an early stage 9th rank. You must know that Haru's attacks were able to cause harm to me at that time, even though I had the defensive powers of a late stage 9th rank expert after transforming. BB raised his head even higher upon hearing Linley's praise, staring around himself haughtily like a victorious general. I can tell you this. BB's speed is definitely higher than Oliver's. What's more, even if Olivier was able to land a blow of his Sword of the Aurora on BB, he still probably wouldn't be able to break past BB's defense. Linley laughed. BB's first defensive power was simply too terrifying. The Sword of the Aurora most likely wouldn't be able to break his defense. Wharton, Hillman, and the others fell silent. That unremarkable little shadow mouse Linley had acquired when he was young had grown to be so powerful. BB shook his head. Har har har. The defense of me, BB, is naturally powerful. That goes without saying. However, I'm not confident in my ability to deal with a blow from the boss's profound truths of the earth. Linley's profound truths of the earth all but ignored defense. The only thing defense would do would be to slightly weaken the strength of the vibrations as it passed through. Given BB's speed, bringing out the 7th princess then fleeing at high speed from the Imperial Palace shouldn't be a problem. Most likely, the Saint-level experts in the palace simply wouldn't have time to catch up. Heh. Boss, just entrust this issue to me. BB was extremely excited. He looked as though he wanted to go break the 7th princess out right now. Don't be impatient. Emperor Johann hasn't made his announcement yet with regards to who he will choose, after all. Right now, Linley was prepared for either eventuality. He wouldn't be caught off guard. Both Wharton and Bloomer spent these next few days worrying. Many of the nobles of the imperial capital were also secretly guessing which one of them would end up marrying the 7th princess. In the imperial palace, the emperor was currently in a seated meeting with a blue-haired middle-aged man. In front of them was a strategic wargame board in front of them. These games were quite popular in the military, and Emperor Johann often liked to play this game as well. Your Imperial Majesty, you've raised a fine daughter. She's actually attracted so many suitors, including my own younger son. The blue-haired middle-aged man laughed. This blue-haired middle-aged man was the mighty Imperial Left Premier, Judd Darrell. Judd and Johann were on extremely good terms. And in private they were as close to each other as brothers. Judd, stop teasing me. In front of Judd, Johann only addressed himself as me, not using the royal we. Just from this alone, one could tell how close the relationship was between these two men. But of course, he only did so when nobody else was present. You don't know this, but this has been a huge headache for me. Bloomer and Wharton aren't too much of an issue. Either would be a fine choice. But they're older brothers, Emperor Johann sighed. Olivier and Linley both are absolutely terrifying. Judd nodded. Indeed. I saw that astonishing battle in the air above the Colosseum as well. Olivier and Linley both revealed that they had peak stage saint-level power from the very beginning. I didn't expect that the power they initially revealed was just the tip of the iceberg. They actually both had their own ultimate attacks, and Olivier even dared to challenge the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. Johann nodded. Olivier and the monolithic sword saint competed before. Last time, Olivier lost. But despite having already competed and thus knowing exactly how powerful the monolithic sword saint is, he still dares to challenge him yet again? That means he definitely has something that is making him confident. I have a feeling that both Olivier and Linley will be people on the level of the monolithic sword saint in the future. Johann sighed. The most damnable thing is, both of these men are extremely protective of their younger brothers. Judd. You tell me. How can I not have a headache? Judd began to laugh. Then, Your Imperial Majesty, have you made your decision yet? Judd looked at Johann. Johann nodded. I've made my decision. Who? Judd was very curious. Johann said resignedly, I admit that Linley is indeed the most brilliant person I have seen in my entire life. He is astonishing in every single aspect. But compared to him, Olivier isn't much inferior. If it weren't for other factors, I would probably choose Warden. Then Your Imperial Majesty, you mean to say, you have chosen Bloomer. Judd could tell what Emperor Johann meant. Right. Johann nodded. There's nothing for it. Bloomer is, after all, the personal disciple of the war god. You should know how influential the war god is in the empire. In addition, over 4 of his fellow apprentices have come to speak with me. All of them did so for Bloomer's sake. Emperor Johann said helplessly. 4 of them. Judd was shocked as well. I've heard that the personal disciples of the war god rarely get involved in matters. I didn't expect that as soon as he became a personal disciple, 4 other personal disciples would come out and speak on his behalf. Judd, you should know that although in principle, I have the most authority in the empire, in reality, the war god is still the highest power in the land. Emperor Johann, in the end, had decided to side with the war god's college. The imperial left premier's manor. An astonishingly handsome young man with long, flowing blue hair was taking a casual stroll on the stone roads within his own family's estates. Whenever he saw anyone, even servants, he would smile and nod towards them. Kalen Darrell, a genius magus. In the end, His Imperial Majesty decided to choose Bloomer. Kalen shook his head and sighed. His father, Judd, deeply doted on Kalen. He had even told Kalen about this affair. Why? Why can't His Imperial Majesty consider his daughter's feelings? In his heart, Kalen was actually very unhappy with some of the coldly pragmatic ways in which the noble clans and the imperial clan handled affairs. In his mind, people should treat other people well. If 2 people were to be together, it should be because both loved each other. Emperor Johann should have considered things from Nina's standpoint. That girl Nina. Thinking back to how he and Nina had played around together when they were young, Kalen came to a decision. He immediately headed out of the left premier's manor. The only thing he said to the housekeeper when he ran into him was, I'm going out for a walk. Kalen headed straight for Count Warden's manor on Boulder Street. Kalen had come to a decision. He had to inform Warden of this affair. At nightfall, Warden was still training in his manor's training area. Next to him, Linley was meditating quietly. Just at this moment, a servant ran over. Milord, Lord Kalen of the left premier's household has arrived. Kalen. Warden came to a halt. In his heart, Warden actually felt very grateful to this former romantic rival of his. After all, Kalen had voluntarily given up his pursuit. If he hadn't, this affair would be even more complicated. Kalen's come. Warden, I'll accompany you. Linley was actually quite curious about this young man who had voluntarily abandoned his pursuit as well. Linley and Warden headed directly to the guest hall. When they saw Kalen, the first impression Linley had was that this was a person who was very amiable and easy to get along with. Warden. Seeing Warden, Kalen smiled, then looked at Linley. And this should be your older brother, Master Linley. I've heard of Master Linley's reputation a long time ago. Linley smiled at him as well. Kalen, please sit. Wharton was very friendly towards him. Coiling shook his head. No need. I've come today to tell you something. As soon as I have, I'll be leaving. Coiling's face grew solemn. Tell me what? Wharton said, puzzled. Coiling said resignedly, Wharton, based on the information I've received, on March 15th, His Imperial Majesty is most likely going to choose Bloomer, not you. But of course, since it isn't March 15th yet, nothing is for sure. However, this information I have is most likely 90% accurate.